Good morning and welcome to our July 13th Board of Commissioners meeting. Today we are honored to have with us Pastor Craig Bowler of Sanctuary Church, who will provide our invocation, followed by the pledge, which will be brought by firefighter Joseph Puff, Jr. If you are willing and able, please stand for our invocation and pledge.
Called these two today. Thank you for their gifts. Thank you for their passions, their convictions. Thank you for their willingness to come and advocate for what's best for the people of this county, your people, the people you've created, the people you love. Jesus, you prayed that your people would be unified. You prayed that your people would be one, just as you are one with the Father. Jesus, would you do that with us today here? Would you unify us as one? We need your power. We need your strength, your grace, your mind. So would you make us one? So your work would be done and your will would be enacted on this earth, in this county, as in heaven. Most of all, Jesus, I pray that each person here today would know of your love. Each of these here today would know of your deep love for them, personally and individually, just as they are, right where they are. So I pray the prayer that Paul prayed, that out of your glorious riches, Jesus, you would strengthen these here in this room and those watching online. I pray that you would strengthen these here with power through your Spirit in their inner being, so that you, Jesus, may dwell in their hearts through faith. And I pray that these here and those watching online would be rooted and established in love, and they may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and that each of these, and that I would know this love that surpasses knowledge, that we all together would be filled to the measure of all the fullness of you, God. And now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to your power that is at work within us. To you, God, be glory in Jesus Christ through all generations, forever and ever and ever, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
If you'd all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor, for that prayer and that call for us to work together as one. And thank you, firefighter, for the pledge today. Our meeting is now officially called to order. At the beginning of this meeting, we will have our COVID update provided by Cobb Douglas Public Health.
Okay.
Good morning, Doctor.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for having me. Let me see if we can get all right. So we'll have our update today on a COVID situation. So we are seeing a little bit of an uptick. So we're at 75 cases per 100,000, and you can see a slight upward trend towards the end of the graph there. And so it's thought that maybe we are seeing some cases from the 4th of July weekend and the lifting of a lot of restrictions that happened simultaneously. So we're keeping an eye on this. If you see throughout the country, we have multiple surges that are happening at this time that seem to be driven by the Delta variant, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Next slide, please. We're also watching the percentage rate. That has also come up a little bit as well. So we're up to 2.3%, which is still in a safer range, under 5%. But you see over on the chart over there, we are seeing an uptick in that, the positivity rate as well. So these are things that we definitely need to be aware of, especially if you are non-vaccinated. Next slide, please. So this is one of the graphs I wanted to pull everybody's attention to. So when you take a look at that darker orange area, that's the B1617 variant. That's the Delta variant that we're seeing. We'll talk a little bit about that, but it is thought that it's doubling every couple of weeks. It is the dominant strain in the United States. So keep your eyeball on that last bar over there to the right, and then when you look at the next slide, you can see what happens. So here we are. So this is the Delta variant that has represents the majority of all strains that are coming in through the CDC at this time. So this is quite concerning, and our last numbers, we went from 0.6% of samples that were showing the Delta variant to 12%, and that was almost 3 weeks ago. So the anticipation is that we should be well over 20%, 30%. Next slide, please. Here are some of the hot spots. If you take a look, people have heard of Missouri being an issue, and you look at some spots there in Colorado and in Florida as well. So when you go to the next slide, when you look at those hot spots, you can see that dark orange is the Delta variant. So you can see in areas where the Delta variant has taken over, you also see some issues with surges in the areas. Missouri is dealing with a pretty big surge in hospitalizations at this time, and their issues seem to be from the Delta variant, but as well as having low vaccination rates throughout their communities. So these are important variables that we all need to be thinking about as we steer through this next variant. Next slide, please. So in Georgia, this was just a few weeks ago. We were looking at about 12% of the B1617 variant, which is the Delta variant. This new number should be coming out today. I anticipate it's going to be between 25 and 30-something% at this time. So it is out there, and it is taking a hold within our communities. Next slide. So what are the problems with the B617 or Delta variant? It is thought to be about 60% more contagious than the last variant, the one that was the Alpha variant that originated in Great Britain. It is definitely much more transmissible, but the good news is that it is susceptible to the vaccines that we have at this time. What they're seeing throughout the nation is those that are hospitalized or dying from COVID-19 at this point are almost exclusively unvaccinated. They are seeing younger folks that are being hospitalized and dying, and they are unvaccinated people at this point. So this is why the vaccine is so important. Just some other updates. We continue to have testing. So we have the Mako labs in the Smyrna area, and a lot of testing throughout the district that's available if you need it. Next slide. Here's some of our vaccinations. So Georgia's at 44%. Remember, the president wanted us at 70% for the 4th of July, and we didn't quite hit that number. Next slide. You can see this is Cobb County. So we have it divided there by census tracts, and you can take a look at areas that are better vaccinated than others. So there are some light areas like Dobbins, Air Force Base that they don't turn in their vaccination rates. So we're about 51% that has their first vaccination, and it continues to climb. We've seen over the last week or so, we've stalled out about 51%, but it is one of the best in the state for vaccination, but still a little shy of where it needs to be. Next slide. So you look at, this is one of the things I think is very protective for Cobb County is when you look over to the right, the 65s and olders, and also this 55 to 64. I bet you if you look at 60 and older, they have a high vaccination rate. This is very protective because you know the people that we lost were almost exclusively in the older age ranges. So this is extremely important for protecting our community, and the most vulnerable is making sure they're vaccinated. And I'm really proud that we were able to have about 100% across the board on that. And so they just added this week the 10 to 14-year-olds, and so we see that there is some activity going on there, and anticipate as more data comes out that we'll get more people vaccinated. But it's not horrible, 15 and above, what we're seeing for vaccination. We still have room, so next slide, please. We still have a lot of vaccinations available, so you may know that we have shut down our Jim Miller location for mass vaccination. But the good news is it has been taken into all of our health departments. So Cobb, the Marietta Public Health Department has vaccinations, as well as Smyrna and Ackworth. They're all walk-in. They're all 5 days a week. You can come in and get the Pfizer vaccine there. And if you live closer to Douglas, you can go to our Douglas Health Department as well. Next slide. We also have a lot of our outreach teams. So Wellstar is helping us, and almost, I think it's like 3 or 4 days a week, we'll be in different areas doing vaccinations. So we are hitting a lot of these back-to-school events and different events that are popping up in different areas, and work with our commissioners to try to be there as well when they have some people coming together. We've completed our list of our homebound folks. If you have some homebound folks that can't reach us, please let us know, and we can send a team out to get them vaccinated as well. Next slide. This is our core group. They also do different areas. It's all on our website if you hit up one of those areas. Next slide. And then this is our outreach calendar that we have. So a lot of different places, the churches, the courts, different areas that we're hitting up for vaccinations. Next slide, please. And that's August, and then next slide. You can still call the Cobb County call center if you have any questions on COVID and some other things as well. So that's available, and make appointments and tell you where we're at. Next slide. So here's the takeaway. The vaccinations are extremely effective against the Delta variant. Remember, the issue with the variants is if you allow them to take hold in a community, there is always a risk that we'll have a new variant that will come out that will be resistant to vaccines. So that's why it's so very important for us to get vaccinated and keep this down. I forgot to mention hospitalizations. Hospitalizations are very good and low at this point. I really think that Cobb County, with the number of vaccinations that we have in our elderly, as well as some natural immunity, that we're in a pretty good situation right now. But the only people that are at risk are the unvaccinated at this point. So I urge you, please, to take whichever vaccine you're comfortable with. The safety profiles are very good. I know Johnson & Johnson came out last night with the Guillain-Barré warning, but this is still very rare, very low numbers that they're talking about. They're talking about 100 folks and about 12 million vaccines that were given. So the natural number is 10 out of 1 million that would naturally get Guillain-Barré. So it's not like it's anything that is extremely increased, but the risk definitely is not outweighed by the benefit right now. We continue to go and do a lot of outreach everywhere that we can, but please, if you are unvaccinated, please exercise caution. I would not be gathering in large groups at this point. We have areas in Georgia that continue to have very, very high rates. Over 1,000 per 100,000 folks are still getting COVID at this point. And now it looks like it's the Delta variant that is taking over. So I exercise caution, and please get vaccinated if you can. Next slide. I think that's it. Can take questions.
Thank you for that update.
You're welcome.
I
Thank
believe
you.
the last update you were here, we were at about 50 out of 100,000 cases.
Yeah.
And my assistant in preparing a slide today, we had the number of 61 out of 100,000. So
Friday.
we are seeing that case rate creep up.
Yeah.
And still, when it's at 100 over 100,000, that's considered high transmission. Right. So-
Absolutely. Yeah, so remember, we look at all of these things in conjunction together. So we look at the case rate, but we also look at the hospitalization rate and the positive percentages. I looked at some of the other counties this morning. They sent our updates last night. And there's some places that are over 20% positive right now. So there's seriously issues that are happening in different parts of the state. We're very, very fortunate, I think, of everything that we've done, that we have in a good situation, but there's still work to be done, especially with our unvaccinated citizens.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from commissioners?
No.
Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you, everybody.
presentation and for your time. With that, we are going to move into commissioner presentations. And just for formality's sake, we do have a third presentation to be added to the agenda that we all discussed yesterday. And we are very grateful to have our athlete with us who will be not only representing Cobb County, but representing our country. So with that, I move that we approve the addition of agenda item number 49. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, we'll call the question. All right, very good. With that, we'll kick off our first presentation, which will be for Treyton Homes. If you are here, please join me up front. It is my honor today to recognize Treyton Homes. Whereas they were founded in 1971 by brothers Bill and Milburn Poston, Treyton Homes is one of Metro Atlanta's oldest home building companies. This family-owned business, headquartered right here in Marietta, is celebrating 50 years of building outstanding quality and value into every home. Whereas the company has deep roots in Cobb and has been an integral part of our community during the past 5 decades, Chris and Cliff Poston, sons of co-founder Bill and nephews of co-founder Milburn, currently manage the business. And whereas Treyton Homes has been honored with numerous civic and industry awards, including more than 50 Obie Awards for home building excellence from the Greater Atlanta Home Builders Association. It has also been named the best builder in Cobb County by Cobb Life magazine and earned the Guild Master Award for Customer Service Excellence 7 times. And whereas to honor this milestone 50th anniversary, Treyton Homes is making a donation to Home Aid Atlanta for every new home closed in 2021. The nonprofit's mission is to help families and individuals experiencing homelessness create new lives. Now, therefore, we, the Cobb County Board of Commissioners, do hereby honor Treyton Homes, its employees, and the Poston family for 50 years of excellence in the home building industry. This, the 13th day of July 2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's for you. Would you like to share?
I didn't know we were going to speak. Well, first, thank you very much to the county and Chairman Cupid very much. I have my dad, Bill Poston, here. We have Amy Kessler, and we have Kimberly Garwood. They work with us in our sales department. So we love Cobb County, been here for a long time, and just appreciate everything about the county and appreciate this presentation.
Very good. And we appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
We'll stand here and line up for a picture. Take care. Our next 2 presentations will be brought by Commissioner Sheffield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first presentation is virtual. Do we have Mr. Walton on the line?
Hey, good morning.
There he is. Good morning. How are you?
Great.
Good. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This is a certificate of recognition presented to Senior Chief Petty Officer Donald W. Walton. The Cobb County Board of Commissioners congratulates Senior Chief Petty Officer Donald A. Walton for completing 27 years of service in the United States Navy. Walton, a Mableton resident who retired July 1st, ended his long career at Naval Operational Support Center, Atlanta. He previously served as the senior enlisted leader at Navy Reserve Logistics in Bahrain. We salute Walton for his decades of service to America, helping maintain our nation's freedom in the face of its enemies. This, the 13th day of July, 2021. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
Would you like to share a few words? No pressure, but you can if you'd like.
Well, thank you, Board of Commissioners and you, Commissioner Sheffield, and your team for putting this presentation, honor me today for this recognition of serving the world's greatest Navy. Like you said, I've been in for 27 years and just recently retired, so I'm getting acclimated to the civilian life. But thank you so very much for giving me the opportunity to be here today and be here in a virtual environment. So thank you so very much.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. We have our county chair that's joining in the presentation, as she is an avid runner herself. Come on up. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Kenneth Selman, and he is a resident of Cobb County in Mableton, and he just qualified to join in the Summer Olympics in Tokyo, so we're very excited. Let's give him a hand. The Cobb County Board of Commissioners salute athlete and Mableton resident Kenneth Selman. While attending Pace Academy, he became a 7-time GHSA state champion in track and field and 3-time All-American. At the University of North Carolina, Selman won 2 ACC championships, his college personal record of 48.12, which he ran at the NCAA Division I Championship in 2018, is the fastest in UNC history. Oh, that's impressive. Selman also won the USA Outdoor Championship in 2018 and represented his country at the 2018 Athletics World Cup in London, where he won the 400-meter hurdle. We salute his winning spirit with the knowledge he has represented his community with excellence on the local, national, and international stage. This, the 13th day of July, 2021.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you. You know, I'm from Maywood, Georgia, obviously in Cobb County. And I think the coolest part about this experience has been kind of representing so many things, you know, representing my family, you know, my school, UNC, and obviously I grew up in Mableton in Cobb County, so one of the best ones to represent. So thank you for the recognition. I'm excited to get this thing done in Tokyo, and I'll see you on the other side.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Excuse me, a fellow Tar Heel would love to have a picture with our athlete. If you can please join us up front.
You can get in here too, Mom. No, I'm just going to get you. We'll be watching.
Just wonderful. It's great to celebrate accomplishments like that. Thank you. You're welcome. All right, we will next move into the public hearing portion of our meeting. The first public hearing is to conduct the first public hearing on the 2021 proposed property tax increase as defined by Georgia law. And I just want to share a revision to our agenda item is that the dates have been changed for publication in our local paper, and that the first, second, and third public hearings were advertised in the MDJ on Friday, July 2nd, 2021, Friday, July 9th, 2021, and will run again on Friday, July 16th, 2021. With that, Bill.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And we just want to clarify, so we were initially planning on July 5th, but because of the holiday, we had to shift a little early, so we went to July 2nd. So thank you for pointing that out.
Certainly.
I do have the proposed millage rate schedule here, so I'm going to go through a brief presentation before we open the public hearing. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware of the dates. We've already talked about when this was advertised in the MDJ. Our first public hearing is today. We're going to have a second public hearing on July 20th and a special called meeting at 6:30. And our third and final public hearing will be on July 27th at the regularly scheduled board meeting. At that board meeting, we're also proposing to adopt the millage rate. This schedule is in compliance with both Georgia state law and well as county code, so I just wanted to bring that out. we are very strict on how we have to follow the schedule as we move forward. Okay, so here's the kind of the big show here. We're proposing the exact same millage rate that we had in 2020. So, and again, this is the millage rate for 2021 that will be voted on at the end of July. So we did have a significant digest growth even despite the pandemic, so that's reflected in the graph below. But one of the things I wanted to point out to you is kind of, this is the a little bit more detailed version of the digest. So you can see what was adopted in 2020 and then what's being proposed for 2021. One of the biggest items that I want to call to your attention that we'll touch on a little bit more in a second is the exemption line at the bottom, second line from the bottom. So this increased $884 million from 2020 to 2021. So this is the residents of Cobb County being able to take advantage of the homestead exemption and a few other exemptions to help keep their their property taxes low. So with that, I wanted to share an example because this is one of the things that we always have to put in the paper. We talk about the legal notice that goes into the paper, and we always focus on the general fund, and this is what's legally required to be presented. So the highlighted number that you'll see there is a 5.35% growth, and that's what we're legally advertised, even though the board is proposing to keep the millage rate exactly the same because the county will actually collect more than they did in the previous year. We legally have to advertise this as a tax increase. On the graph or the table on your right of this slide, I wanted to show you an example of a property. This is just a hypothetical property, so we're going to say a fair market value of a primary residence of $350,000. Let's say they're reassessed and their property value, fair market value, increased to $400,000. Okay, they've already been in this home for a period of time. They've had a homestead exemption. So you're taxed on typically the 40% assessed rate, but then you also get to take that homestead exemption on a primary residence. So the net taxable value of this property in 2020 was $130,000 times that millage rate that we're proposing today was roughly $1,099.80. And despite the reassessed value going to $400,000, because of the homestead exemption, that amount does not change. The only time that were to change is if that property were to turn over and then new exemption was filed by a new homeowner at a higher value. Mm-hmm. So if you're in your home and despite the being reassessed, this does not change for you. The general fund's millage, the general fund property tax component does not change. So I just want to point that out as we move forward because this is always a confusing part when we have to advertise this. And I get why we do that, but again, I wanted to clarify kind of how that works. So the biggest driver of this change for us is on non-homesteaded properties, but if a homesteaded primary residence does not have an impact from this. Okay, so with that, I would ask the board to consider opening the public hearing.
Thank you. Those who are here for our public hearing will have 3 minutes to speak to this particular matter of the budget. Of our millage, We will take an unlimited number of speakers to speak towards our millage. And if you can help us just by lining up in the middle, that can help us to see the numbers of speakers that we have. So if we have any speakers here, again, for this public hearing, you're more than welcome to come forward.
Good morning. My name is Randall Bedgood. I really like Bill's presentation, the way he had his charts and all there. He really explained the homestead exemption and the what's called the floating homestead exemption. When your property value goes up, your homestead exemption goes up to offset that. I wish he had a chart showing the fire fund and the bond fund. That's where your taxes go up at. Y'all always skim over that, and then people get their tax bills, and they say, you said my taxes wasn't going up, but they did. And so it's kind of something y'all kind of brush under the table. But with the increase in property values, even the increase in my property values, you're going to see an increase in your taxes because you didn't show the full picture. You didn't show the fire fund and the bond fund. And I'd like to know what happens to the extra money that's generated for the bond fund and for the fire fund. There's never a budget presented for the fire fund. I mean, you know, I know y'all hash it out somewhere with Public Safety Director and whatever, but there's never a public showing of what's being done with that money. I know they have a budget, and it seems to me like you could have a budget presentation on where that money is going and what it's being spent for. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional speakers? With that, the public hearing is now closed. We also have another public hearing before us today, which is to conduct a public hearing to establish a contract with a consulting firm to provide consulting services for the 2021 American Rescue Plan for Cobb County. Will the presenter for that public hearing please come forward?
Sorry, Chairwoman. So this is our public hearing because we're going to be expending over $100,000 for consulting fees for our 2021 American Rescue Plan as we move forward. So at this time, I ask the board to open the public hearing.
Okay, similar to the format of the last public hearing, we'll take an unlimited number of speakers to speak directly to this agenda item, which is with respect to providing consulting services to the county for the 2021 American Rescue Plan. The public hearing is now open if anyone would like to speak. Seeing no speakers, the public hearing is now closed. Thank you. Now we have our budget presentation, which will be provided by our finance manager, or finance director, excuse me.
Thank you for letting me do all these at the same time. That makes
You're
it
very
so much
welcome.
more,
I don't know why
so much easier.
why you left.
So. Okay, so just like the millage schedule, we have similar meetings, but I want to point out a slight difference. Today will be a budget presentation. We're not required to have a public hearing tonight, but we are required to have one prior to adoption. So that public hearing will be on July 20th at the special called BOC meeting. And again, we will be having the adoption on July 27th. And again, this schedule is in compliance with both Georgia state law and county code as we move forward. As a part of the budget presentation, we want to call out any new positions that are created because it creates board has to provide the authority to create these positions, and these positions are being included in the proposed budget. We're creating 4 full-time positions, 3 in elections, 1 in the county manager's office, and then 2 additional part-time positions. The total cost of all of these positions is $397,000 to the general fund. Okay, and as we've already stated in the millage presentation, we're proposing a flat millage for 22, but not to be confused, we're voting on the 21 millage on July 27th. This is a planning tool as we move for a the budget model into 2022. We're proposing a flat millage, but there will be an exception, even though the millage in total in this budget does include a millage shift between the debt service fund and the fire fund. Because at the end of 2021, the debt service fund will have collected enough funds to pay off all the outstanding GO bonds that the county has in place. So legally, the county cannot collect any additional revenue into that fund. So that is something that will have to be brought back forward as we move into 22. And again, the board will vote on the 22 millage next July. So again, the millage rate will stay exactly the same from 20 to 21. There's a proposed change for 2022, but that will not be voted upon until next July. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. All right, so on the revenue side, we did receive a significant tax increase in FY21, and we're proposing an additional increase in 22. Now, one of the big things that you'll see as we move through this presentation is a significant increase in revenues, because if you remember when we adopted 21 for the first time since the recession, we adopted a 0% digest growth because of the pandemic. Took a very conservative approach. Although the digest did come in very strong, we did have other revenues that were significantly impacted. So some of those revenues were to offset the reductions. We're proposing leaving the water transfer from the water fund to the general fund at the current rate of 8%. And then on the expenditure side, some of the key highlights within the general fund, we are continuing to move forward with the next step for public safety, certified and sworn officers in March. We're also addressing the first year of 3 years of compression adjustments for public safety at the same pay period. 3% merit for employees not included in the public safety step and grade program on the same pay period. So with that being said, in the final budget documents that the board will be asked to approve on July 27th, we have those dates. So effective March 6th, 2022 with a pay date of March 25th, 2022. All three of those, both the step, the compression, and the 3% merit will take effect on the same pay period as what's being proposed. We also had increases in pension and health care, which are common year over year. And then we're restoring some of our capital that we removed from the budget in 2021 due to the pandemic. And the board was able to restore those via an agenda item mid-year, but we're making those, again, part of the adoption process. Okay. All right, so we're going to touch on, I'm sorry, I'm going to back up because I left it off this slide, but we'll touch on it later, is the county is also setting up a contingency to address compression for non-public safety certified, or non-public safety positions as well in FY22. So that is in there, and I will touch on it when we get to the contingency slide, but I didn't want to exclude it because it is very interwoven into this process. Okay. All right, as we move forward, here's some quick revenue updates. And the first top of the line, you'll see property taxes. We already touched on that. That's an 8% growth. But again, 5% of that is from FY21, what we actually experienced. Because again, in 2021, we adopted a 0%. And the additional 3 is what's being projected. But as you kind of look through those, you see most of these are negatives. So as we kind of pare down through most of these, you're only going to see property tax revenues and other taxes as positives. All other categories we're paring back on. The other taxes are being driven from our title ad valorem fees that we collect, as well as our insurance premium taxes are continuing to remain strong. We are taking a conservative approach as we pare back on some of these, but you'll see in the other financing sources as well as the interest that you're going to see parebacks on those specifically due to interest rates that we've received. And then fines and forfeitures due to the court cases being closed during the pandemic, we saw a significant drop in those. We are seeing those begin to reopen, but we know there's some significant challenges there as we move forward. We hope to see those rebound, but for the most part, even the other categories are slight reductions, but relatively flat, but an overall increase of 4.82%. Okay. All right. On the expenditure side, the biggest driver we're seeing is personnel. You're seeing a 3.65% increase. We've already listed a lot of those categories between the step and grade, the merit, the compression, and so on. Pension and health care also play a big part of that. The biggest line that you'll see on here is the 377% increase in capital. Obviously, that's very skewed because we pulled almost all of the capital out of the budget in FY21. So to kind of give you an idea of what that looked like prior to the pandemic, we had $14 million of capital adopted in FY20. It is $10.2 million in FY22 being proposed, and the biggest change there is a reduction in vehicle replacement due to the fleet schedule, not necessarily a funding issue. It was more of a paring down to what we need to replace vehicles as we move forward. Okay. The transfers out are remaining relatively consistent, and then contingencies I'm going to touch on in the next slide here. Okay, so here's a comparison of the contingencies as we move forward. BOC contingency is the same. County manager contingency, we're seeing we're increasing there to help address some ongoing needs that happen throughout the year. Designated contingencies are going to be our shift differential, the undesignated contingencies are change of venue, storm debris, and awards and recognition, succession planning. So those are continue to move in there. And then we had a significant change in the personnel-related contingencies, but the biggest change there is due to the compression contingency that we talked about for the non-certified and sworn officers, or the people not a part of the public safety step and grade. And then we are getting a new Superior Court judge starting this January, so we have a contingency to address all the positions associated with the new judge, and those will be fully funded as we move forward into the next budget cycle. Okay. And then one of the big topics that we always address each and every year is how are the Braves bonds funded? You can see the plan of adoption for 2021 is relatively pretty much a mirror image for 2022. We are seeing some positive changes in this, and as those changes continue to develop, those agenda items will be brought forward to if this funding needs to change. And by change, it would only improve and lessen the general fund's impact as we move forward. The biggest area that we're watching closely is the transfer from the Hotel Motel Fund. We are starting to see those room rates pick back up and the occupancy go up. We're proposing no transfer at this time, just like we did for 2021. But as those improve, it would be something that we'd bring back for the board's consideration to help reduce the general fund's impact. But again, that would come back only if the revenues were there to support it. Those revenues are currently being used to fund the debt service on the Performing Arts Center bonds, and that's all we simply budget, the bare minimum that we need to cover those requirements. Okay, so here's a summary of all the funds, and one of the things that I want to call out to your attention, just as some big ticket items that I think are worth mentioning, is that if you scroll down to the fire fund, it's a 10.99% increase. Now, just like the general fund, we had to pare back on capital replacement in FY21, and that's really what you're seeing here. Is yes, you have the merit, the step, and the small increases for personnel, but this is the restoring a lot of the capital replacement that was taken out of the budget, just like we're doing within the general fund. And this is a self-sustaining fund, so any funds collected within this fund stay within this fund. And just as another reminder, the fire fund still receives over $4 million from the general fund because of the way the state changed the TABT collections. So the general fund is still providing additional funding to the fire fund to keep them whole prior to that change at the state level. Okay. All right. And then a couple other things that I just want to point out. You see some significant reductions. Debt service. Again, this is the last year that we'll collect revenue within, or 21 will be the last year that we collect revenue for the debt service fund, but we do have the debt service payments to make with the cash that we'll have on hand. So that is simply the debt service schedules winding down. And then one of the other significant reductions you'll see, dollar-wise isn't there, but percentage-wise is 7.33% for law library. This is just a pare back based on the court volumes because obviously the law library is supported by the court activity. Okay, so an overall for all of our governmental funds, you're looking at a 4.71% increase. Okay. And then we have our proprietary funds. Apparently this time during the pandemic is a great time to be in the golf course business. Everybody wants to be outside and socially distanced. The Cobb County's facility has been a self-sustaining operation, and they have been able to generate significant revenues over the past year as people have been wanting to be outside and socially distanced throughout the pandemic. We are seeing a little bit of an increase in there due to the revenue volume, not necessarily due to the expenditure volume, but this is going to be reinvested in the course and help to maintain the facilities that we have. As just one other highlight of this is the course was actually able to generate some revenues and send some money back to the general fund in FY21 of $200,000. So that was positive. As this continues to generate revenue, those monies can be sent back to the general fund to help repay some of the initial investment within the course. Okay? And then we have our sustainability, waste, and beautification, formerly known as solid waste, is relatively flat. Transit is relatively flat. We're not proposing any new changes to the program. This is just simply based on transit passenger fares and grant funding is what we see as we move forward. Our water system is relatively flat again as we move forward. All right. And these are the funds, our capital budgets, that probably have the most swings outside of the stadium capital maintenance because this is based on a schedule. Our capital project fund itself is going up just over 1%. This is funding a lot of our IT projects. These are projects that span over multiple years that are not funded by SPLOST. Things like PC replacement, the Uniform Court Case Management System, on-base mobile data terminals, and so on. The next two are water-related capital project funds. These are the ones that are going to have the most swings. They're based on capital project schedules, but the water RE&I fund has roughly a $30 million swing here, and the reason being is we're spending down bond proceeds that we issued to fund the lift station in South Cobb that was damaged several years ago. And again, just a reminder to the board is if we get to the point where we can receive insurance monies to recover that, those monies will go back to the water fund to help replenish those costs and to continue to pay any debt service payments associated with the bonds. The water system development fees, the biggest change for this is 15%, but it's roughly $3 million is the this system has enough to use cash this year to pay some of our GFA loan obligations. So we're not adopting those debt service payments this year because we're going to be using cash that we have on hand, which is why you see a little bit of a change in this. Okay, so with that, that's the budget presentation. Also, just a reminder to the board, we'll have both the budget and millage presentations posted on the county's website. The detailed versions of those also be posted on the county's website, and they're available in the room today, as well as a copy up in finance as well for anybody who would like to receive a copy. So any questions that I can answer for you today?
Any questions? Commissioner Burrow?
Yes. Thank you, Bill. Can we have a copy of the PowerPoint?
Absolutely.
As well?
I will send everybody in the room a copy of the PowerPoint, and again, we'll post it on the website as well. But I'll make sure all of you have it. We'll send it out as soon as the meeting's over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Gamble?
Hi, Bill. This is more addressing Mr. Bedgood's question.
Sure.
Because I remember last year there was discussion that we would be ending the Parks Bond Mill,
Yes.
which is that .11. But I see it's still included for this year.
Yes.
Can you explain why?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. So it's the part that's confusing, I think, for a lot of people is the fact that we're doing the millage adoption for FY21, which ends in September. So we're doing that on July 27th, but the proposed budget starts October 1. So in the proposed FY22, there is no millage rate in the debt service fund. So what we're saying today is that if the board approves on July 27th, the .13 mills that's currently in the debt service fund through September, which would be the final year of tax collections that we need for the bonds, we will have sufficient funds to pay off all the bonds. So you do see an adopted budget, but you don't have any revenues associated with that in the debt service fund because we have the funds that we need to do that. So that's what, and because all those funds are legally restricted to only go to bonds, once we get to that point, we cut it off and we say we cannot collect anymore. We have sufficient cash to take care of it. And when I say cash, we'll have revenue. So obviously we have this year's property tax collections that will feed into that cash number. But at the end of the day, those have to be legally restricted. So again, that's why it's a little bit confusing when we're ending a program like this, is that we're asking you on the same meeting to adopt the millage rate for FY21, again, that ends this September, and then adopt a budget that begins October 1 with a different millage rate, being a zero millage rate for the debt service fund, because we cannot collect after this year.
So what can the homeowners expect on their tax bill then for next year? Essentially that that line will be gone, or what can they expect to see?
Yes.
Or even their bill that they receive in October?
That's great. So the bill that they will receive for this year will include that .13 mills. Okay, so you'll receive that, and then the county will begin collecting those as early as August, and it usually spans into late December is usually our collection period. But that bill that you receive this late summer will be that .13 mills within the debt service fund. The bill you receive next summer, again, assuming we don't, the voters don't approve another GO bond, which that's not even, we're not going to go there, but we're just saying, assuming that doesn't take place and there's no plan in place to do a GO bond, obviously. But that would be a zero line. So there would be nothing on the debt service. So for those that live either in the city limits or in the unincorporated Cobb, that line will be zero next year. Okay.
Thank you for that question, Commissioner. Thank you for clarifying, Bill. Are there any additional questions? Commissioner Bowman?
Yeah, that's very confusing
It
because we're adopting the 21 millage, which is the .13 mills for the parks bond is in that.
Mm-hmm.
But when we adopt the budget and the millage for 2022 in July of 2022, it will be paid off.
Correct.
So there has been talk of doing away with it totally, lowering the millage by the .13 or transferring it to the fire fund to pay them back for when we borrowed from them in the past. So where does that .13 go between the end of September this year and July next year?
Okay. So any property tax revenue that we collect using the .13 for this year will go into the debt service fund. So let's say, and we always have some residual receivables for property taxes, but for the most part, at the end of the day, the bill that goes out this year will go to the debt service fund. Until the board votes next July, there's no revenue coming in. So once you vote on it this July, it's only revenue that's going to come through the fall that will go into the debt service fund. Until you vote next July, there is no additional revenue collected on a current year property tax bill because there are no bills. At the end of the day, you're going to have the next bill will be next, summer to fall that will come out, and that will be when you vote on July to determine what that rate is on that next bill. But as you said, that line will be zero. Okay.
Okay.
Now, this discussion is helpful. There were two different times where we used to approve the millage and the budget. Now we've brought the millage earlier, which I think is lending itself to this period of time where we have to address that collection.
Yeah, and I think the initial thought is that we always base next year's budget on the current year millage, and that has always been the case. And the only reason that it's not the case is by law, we legally cannot collect any additional debt service funds after this year because we have met that mark. So this is probably your unique exception. So I did want to make sure that these are all great questions because this is a point that's probably not going to come up again in a very long period of time.
Okay. Thank you. And again, thank you, commissioners, for your questions. I think that clarification was needed.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
With that, we will begin our public hearing. Those who are here to speak to our budget, are please welcome to come. I'm sorry, Millage. Yes.
No, we're done with our public hearings.
Oh, I'm sorry. We will not do a public hearing for this until the 20th?
Correct.
Okay, I'm sorry, Jan. I see you.
But now it is time for the public comment, though.
Thank you, appreciate that. I'm getting confused between the millage and the budget hearings. Thank you for your presentation. We will move into our into our public comment portion of the meeting. Bill, if you can let us know how many speakers.
We have 5 speakers in the first portion, and there's 3 that signed up after that for the second portion.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And the first speaker is Ms. Barton.
Good morning. My name is Jan Barton, and I'm here to talk about what has happened over the last 18 months with COVID and to talk about some things that we have learned. The COVID-19 nightmare started in January of 2020 with lockdowns starting mid-March. We were told to take 2 weeks to flatten the curve. It has now been roughly 18 months, and more threats of restrictions are in the offing regarding a so-called variant. Bill Gates has stated that the whole world needs to be vaccinated before we can get back to the old normal. He says the vaccines are the best investment he has ever made, and for every $10 billion he invests, he gets $200 billion back. So I find it hard to not think there isn't some conflict of interest. I'm going through this because I am going to get to some points and some requests. Thanks for your patience. Anthony Fauci stated with total assurance in a Georgetown speech in 2017 that President Trump would face a pandemic. Now, how did he know that? I would like to know. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Event 201, was done just 5 months before the pandemic was announced. It laid out every scenario that is happening now. I ask you to please stop investing in coronavirus pandemic infrastructure because there's really no reason to do that, and we'd like our dollars to go elsewhere. The WHO has been receiving money from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The WHO changed the definitions of pandemic such that even a common cold will meet the definition. These people are all working together. The WHO, Fauci, Bill Gates, CDC. The people giving us advice and mandating such tyrannical rules as lockdowns, masks, social distancing, mandated vaccines, vaccine passports have major conflicts of interest. Many are making money on this pandemic hand over fist, as you can see. They are making enormous amounts of money and thrilled because the deaths meet their goals to reduce the world population. See Bill Gates' TED Talk from a few years ago. This is no conspiracy. People will never get to the last year and a half back. They will never be able to be with loved ones from whom they were separated. We could have saved so many lives. There are safe, effective, proven, inexpensive therapeutics and preventatives available. An emergency use authorization for vaccines could not have been issued if we had those solutions, and we do. This experimental concoction that does not really qualify as a vaccine did not meet the requirements of the Nuremberg Code, meaning that people need to have a total understanding of what the risks are versus the value. What is going on now is truly a crimes against humanity. We are asking you not to persist in pushing these dangerous concoctions. The CDC's own website shows the VAERS report with over 9,000 deaths and thousands of serious side effects. There are even more deaths than this because it's estimated that only 1% are recorded in their system. Let our children go back to school. Do not force them to wear masks. Put pressure on our governor and our state legislatures. Be our leaders here in the community that stand up for our freedoms. Masks don't work. Lockdowns don't work. The PCR test is fraudulent. The inventor of the PCR test, Carrie Mullis, stated it is not designed to detect disease. The large number of cycles that it's put through in the labs guarantees false positives. Please stop fear-mongering with the weekly reports from the Public Health Department. Again, the coronavirus is nothing more than a bad flu. Thousands of brave doctors and scientists are asking that these vaccines be removed from the market.
I'm sorry, Ms. Barton, your time is up.
Thank you for your time.
Ms. Scott?
Good morning, Grateful Rising. My name is Quantina Scott. Good morning to everybody once again. I just want to share with you guys, I'm very passionate about my cause and my advocacy, and sometimes I can come across a little strong, and I, in some ways, don't apologize for that because I'm speaking for families that are in need. And I try to speak out of love, and I try to speak to people from my heart. So if you guys take me as being a little harsh, just know that I'm a loving person. Got 6 kids. I love other kids. I love hard, and I'm genuinely a good person. So I don't want you guys to feel like I'm personally attacking you in any kind of way, shape, or form. I'm just speaking from passion at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day. I am here to continue to advocate for an extension for the moratorium. It's coming to an end the 31st of this month. Funding still has not come to a lot of people. There's still a lot of issues with trying to receive funding for families. There are some organizations who are saying that you need to have an unemployment letter that states 3/13/2020, but it was some people who received unemployment previous to that who were impacted prior to that date. They do have unemployment letters who did receive PUA. That needs to be cleared because some organizations don't have a date, but some of them are given a date. Cobb County must act and act fast. We don't have public housing. People need help with housing. We can't keep coming and keep talking about it and keep brushing it underneath the rug. It's an issue. You guys have 22 point something million dollars. You got the second largest amount of money out of the state. Gwinnett was first, Cobb was second. Cobb needs to do a diligent job with making sure that we get housing for people and get the assistance to these people. They need it now. You guys have the ability to eliminate some of the barriers. It should be easy access to get the money. Louisiana, they have it set up where you can come in and get funding the same day, get approved the same day. It doesn't take weeks, it doesn't take months. So you guys have the ability to create different ways to make things happen, and I'm holding you guys accountable. Families are being displaced. There are leases that are not being renewed in a large number. That's concerning. And right now, people can't afford the market rate. Somebody who's paying $1,000 cannot pay $2,000. And then on top of that, you have to make 3 times the income to get into a place. Who has $6,000 to get into a place who once just had to get into a place that $3,000? You're talking about more people being in hotels, motels. If you don't want a tent city, you guys need to do something, because that's going to create a tent city. Everybody can't afford a motel and hotel. That costs even more than staying in an apartment. And if you guys can't give the funding, you guys have the ability to give the funding to people so that they can move. They need the money. Allow people to have the money if they need to relocate. Allow the people to have the money. If they can get 12 months of assistance, let the people who qualify get their money so that they can move on and at least have some stability, have a couple of months where they can be able to pay for their rent and their new living arrangement. There are kids who are going to be displaced, athletes who are playing at their high school, middle school, who have to wait a whole year if they are displaced to have to try and get on a team. Yes, that's true. They may miss out on a scholarship that they've already been playing, say a senior, for 3 years. Last year, they got to be displaced from a circumstance that they had no control over. That's serious. My time is winding down. I just asked Cobb County, do something different, and act fast. Yes. I ask you to act fast. From the love of my heart, act fast. You have the ability to do it, and I expect for you to do it. I'm depending on you to do it. And I thank you for your time. You guys all have a beautiful day.
Ms. Carter.
Oshio, Wengapo. Those are my native languages in Cherokee and Pamunkey, saying greetings. I'm here once again to speak for our community because some of them are being disenfranchised because of this pandemic. We see that new buildings are being, they're being put up at a market rate of 1 bedroom for $1,800 a month. So what we're doing is being priced out of the neighborhood on Riverside Parkway. Regentrification right before our eyes during the pandemic. I want to speak for another woman in our community, Ms. Susan Mueller. People that even have Section 8 certificates are being displaced and homeless. In 1968, the Civil Rights Act provided a program for public housing after Martin Luther King was killed. And I keep saying this because this is in law. This is in law. That's why public housing was called public Indian housing, right? That is the history of public housing. No one that has a Section 8 certificate that was staying in Azure, that used to be Whisper Woods, who stopped taking Section 8. A lot of these apartments during the pandemic is stopping to take Section 8. I also have a granddaughter who was in a fire in Mableton. Her mother-in-law's whole house burnt down. They were safe, thank God. They made it out alive, but they lost everything, right? Within a couple of weeks, I was able to help them, because they're working, get into an apartment right across the street from me. But the mother whose house it was still has Section 8. She can't find a home in Cobb County because no one is renting to Section 8. It's something happening in our county. And believe me, we are watching our public officials that we elect, and I no longer vote just because of skin color. I vote across lines. I vote Democrat, Republican, whoever. I look at policy and what y'all are voting on, okay? Because y'all are working for the taxpayers and the voters of this county. And some people are making millions off this pandemic while other ones are being displaced. And it's not fair. And another thing, I want to talk about the schools, what's been happening with the school system. I don't like what's been going on. Some laws was passed while our kids was being homeschooled. Now, you took all the trades out of the schools, right? When I was in high school, they had auto shop, they had workshop, they had electric shop, they had home economics, cooking and sewing. They trained, because every child is not good for college, right? So some people need these trades that now they have to pay a trade school for that we used to have in schools. Now, y'all take all this out of the schools, but then you want to put in teaching 4- and 5-year-olds about sexuality? I don't agree with that. I don't want them teaching my American Indian children at 4 and 5 years old about sexuality. Our compulsory education is broken. The lies that they teach about our American history need to be fixed. It's just so much that it can be done on the level, the local level. This is why I always come to the local level, because it's not just, some people vote just, every 4 years. I vote every election since I was 18. And I was a Democrat since I was 18. But 2 years ago, I voted for Trump. You know why? Because I liked his policies, okay? I don't care what nobody say. His policies was putting economic things in our communities, right? He was putting business opportunities in our communities, right? He was doing things for our communities. So that's what I vote on. I vote on policy. So we're watching. And women like Susan, this is breaking my heart. She shouldn't be living in a hotel right now with her family, right? She's disabled as I am. And I pay market rate rent. And my husband's been out of work for 16 months because of this pandemic, right? So a lot of these situations were not of our own. We need more help out here in this community. Cobb County, we see what's going on. We see what's being voted on. We come in these meetings and watch and see what money is being spent where we're watching.
Ms. Carter, I'm sorry, your time's up.
Thank you. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Ms. Williams. Ms. Williams. The next speaker is Rock Johnson. Oh, you're here? Okay.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Stephanie Williams, and I'm speaking on behalf of the rental. What's going on with the rent? It's entirely too expensive for people to afford to be able to live in Cobb County and working. But I also want to talk on the assistance that I did receive from Star C. They did help me out, and they also gave me more assistance coming up. So I do appreciate the assistance that I did get, but just try to make these apartments more affordable for working people and to be able to stay in this county and to be able to just and the kids. I got 2 kids back there, one's 2 and one's 7. And I really like it here in Cobb County. I'm not originally from Georgia, but I really love this place and I really want to stay. So just try to make this a place where everybody can live and be able to afford. Because everybody doesn't have a trade or a degree, and everybody's not able to afford to go to school. So, you know, just try to help people out as far as trades and assistance with daycares, and that's mostly what I want to talk about. So I appreciate everything that you guys did to help me with the assistance, and just try to make apartments more affordable for people. Thank you.
Rudolph Johnson. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Bedgood.
Good morning. My name is Randall Bedgood, and I got some handouts here. I'd like for somebody to hand out to you if you would. What that is, that's a copy of a newspaper article from a small town in southeast Georgia that has a population less than 8,000 people. And what's that addressing is the PPP funds. And they were in the process of doing an audit. And like I said, this is just one town. This is not a county. It's just one town. And they found out, cross-referencing business license to people that got the PPP funds, that they had 140 people that got funds that didn't have a business license. So if they did that in a small town of less than 8,000 people, I just wonder how many people in Cobb County might have applied for those funds that didn't have a business license. And as you can see in that article, they're going after those folks. And so I'd like for y'all to take a look at that. The other thing I'd like to address is on the fire fund. You heard me talk about that a while ago. And Bill did a good explanation of explaining what happened to that park bond fund that's going to go away, okay? I would encourage you not to shift that to the fire fund. The fire fund gets a windfall every year. They never reduced the fire fund. They reduced it that time for that amount. But the fire fund gets a windfall every year. Every year, their property tax goes up. They're outside the floating homestead exemption, so they get a windfall every year. The other thing I'd like to address is employee pay. I saw that you gave a 3% merit raise. Now, when you give a merit raise, clarify that for me. Is that a permanent raise, or is that like you did last time where you did the one-time bonus? Is it a true raise that goes towards their retirement and everything like that? Is that a true raise?
We generally don't respond during public comment. Yes, if you can speak to our finance manager.
Okay, I'll ask him, but like I said, you give them a 3% raise, you really should have given them a 6% raise, because you gave them a 3% one-time raise last year, which is gone, didn't increase their standard of living really. So you should have gave them that 3%, and then you should have given them this 3%, which would have been 6%, and it would have put them on par with some of the other, like the police and fire department. Okay, the transportation tax, I think that's a bad move right there. I know that a lot of people think that's the greatest thing, to get a 1% sales tax, but I don't think that's a good idea. And when you do more buses, is that tax going to pay the operating expense? The operating expense is going to have to come from somewhere. You're paying roughly $30 million now to operate the bus system. So if you get a 1% tax and you do all this stuff for buses, is that money going to come out of the general fund to operate that stuff? I don't think we can take that. As far as transportation goes, the thing that drives transportation is zoning. Just think what this county, how much better this county would have been off if we had stuck to the land use plan. I see developers come up here, I've been here 40 years, and I see them come up here all the time, and they want to, they want 10 more houses, they want 20 more houses. I've never heard one time somebody say, why can't you develop it the way it's zoned? Why can't you develop it the way it's zoned? If it's zoned R20, develop it R20. Let it go where it may. And, they always, if you ask one of them, I've asked them before privately, and they'll say, well, we can't make the numbers work. We can't make the numbers work if we don't get more houses. Well, the reason why you can't make the numbers work is whoever you're buying the land from is asking too much for it. If he wants to sell the land, he'll sell it for a price that you can afford to develop it at. But every time you increase the density, you're putting a strain on the traffic, you're putting a strain on natural resources such as water.
Sir, I'm sorry, your time is up.
Thank you, sir.
Chairwoman, that concludes the first portion of the speakers this morning.
Thank you, Bill. We will move into the consent portion of our agenda. At the beginning of the meeting and at the conclusion of the meeting, the consent agenda items have scrolled on the screen, whether you've been here or are at home. We do have some revisions to our consent agenda. And I'll make a motion in reflection of our executive session yesterday. I move that we approve the addition of 2 non-agenda items from the County Attorney's Office to consent, which are agenda items 50 and 51 for condemnation settlement agreements. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? We'll call the question. The vote passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as revised?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? We'll call the question. The vote passes 5-0. Thank you. Next, we will move to our transportation agenda. Excuse me, thank you. Yes, there needs to be some additional verbiage added to the consent agenda motion. Thank you, Commissioner. That we approve the consent agenda as revised and authorize the necessary documents to be executed or signed by the appropriate county personnel. Thank you. All right. With that, we'll move to our
Can we just make that as a motion and second, and then we vote?
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I'll make that in form of a motion that we revise the consent agenda as stated.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Go ahead, Commissioner.
I would like to note my opposition to agenda items number 16 and 18, please.
Please note Commissioner Gamble's opposition to agenda items 16 and 18. And we will revise again that vote. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, we'll call the question. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Yes, now on to transportation.
Very good. Good morning, Drew Ressler, Cobb DOT. Point of order, agenda item number 42 that was pulled, is that correct, Chairwoman?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Agenda item number 42 was pulled, is that correct?
Give me one moment. Yes, per our discussion yesterday.
Okay.
Thank you.
Transportation has 6 agenda items for the board's consideration. Number 36, recommend the Board of Commissioners approve the ranking of the top qualified firm, Atkins North America Incorporated, to provide program management services for the 2022 SPOS Transportation Improvement Program, limited general engineering services, individual major infrastructure projects, transit programs, and airport programs, and authorize negotiations for scope of services and fees utilizing Selection Process 1 competitive negotiations.
All right, so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. The vote passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Recommend the Board of Commissioners approve supplemental agreement number 1 to project number X2780, task order number 1 to the 2020 master task order contract with Gresham Smith and Partners in an amount not to exceed $236,045.31 for final engineering design of Chattahoochee River Trail pedestrian improvements, Phase 1. Approve a task order time extension through July 3rd, 2024. Authorize a corresponding budget transaction and further authorize the chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
Yes, Commissioner Sheffield.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? We'll call the question. The motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Gambrill in opposition.
Thank you. Agenda item number 38, recommend the Board of Commissioners determine that circumstances are necessary are such that it is necessary to proceed with condemnation proceedings by declaration of taking under OCGA Section 32-3-4, authorize the commencement of condemnation proceedings on 2 parcels on South Barrett Reliever Phase 3, project number X2407.
Commissioner Burrow.
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion? We'll call the question. The motion passes 5-0. Agenda item 39.
Thank you. Recommend the Board of Commissioners approve the revised budget and current schedule for the 2005 Transportation Improvements Program, funded primarily by the 2005 Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax, and authorize the corresponding budget transactions per the 2005 SPLOST Transportation Improvement Program budget and schedule attached.
All right, so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, we'll call the question. The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Recommend the Board of Commissioners approve amendment number 1 to the Cobb Framework Agreement with the Town Center Community Improvement District for Advanced Transportation Management Systems, Regional Connected Vehicle Deployment Project, Cobb County Project number X2503.
Commissioner Burrow.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Our final item to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Advanced Sports Construction LLC in an amount not to exceed $130,694 for drainage system repairs on Wolf Valley Court, project number X2288.
Commissioner Burrow.
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion? All right, we'll call the question. The motion passes 5-0, and as was stated, agenda item 42 has been pulled. Thank you. We will now move on to our Public Services tab.
Good morning, Chairwoman, Commissioners, Madam County Manager. Our item this morning is to ask the Board of Commissioners to approve the ranking of the top qualified firms to provide program management services, pre-construction services, and construction management for the Cobb Parks 2022 SPLOST program. Also adding the completion of the remaining projects under the 2011 and 2016 Parks SPLOST program and limited general engineering services for parks operations capital projects, and to authorize Cobb Parks to negotiate final scope and fees with the top-ranked firm, Atlas Technical Consultants, LLC, and if necessary, with the second-ranked firm.
So moved as presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion? We'll call the question. The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Michael. Next, we'll hear from our Communications Director.
Good morning, Chairwoman, Commissioners, and County Manager. This agenda item will allow us to use a small amount of American Rescue Plan funds to send out a mailer to about 31,000 residents across Cobb County, primarily apartment complexes, to make sure all those who could be potentially eligible for our emergency rental assistance program be aware of it and learn how to apply. These mailers will go out very soon, and this comes after a discussion with the Chief Magistrate, who says a lot of people come into his courtroom who are not aware of the program, so this is our next step. So we ask you to approve this agenda item.
Thank you. All right, so then I'll make a motion that we approve this agenda item as presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Just one, Ross, and that we wish you would present all agenda items. What a voice you have.
I would,
That's his TV voice.
I would object to that.
All right, we'll call the question. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Ross.
And we thank you.
Now do you want him to present every item?
Yes, we still would like you to. We'll move on to public comment.
Yes, Chairwoman, we have 3 additional speakers. Ms. Johnston is the first speaker.
Okay, thank you.
I had to look at check my watch to see what time it is. Good morning.
Good morning.
I see you guys have similar colors, so we're going to stand together today. You know, it's kind of funny that this morning I woke up at 1:30 this morning and I wasn't planning on speaking because I'm so tired. But my heart says I got to keep moving. Every time I come to you guys and say something, some adverse action happens against me, but I must continue to speak on behalf of my community. Let me start by saying this. I'm so proud to hear this gentleman said that we're going to have direct mailing to our residents. Because let me tell you what happened, what we did yesterday on behalf of the Azure Apartments community, because we stand with you. We went out yesterday, actually, Miss Susan, can you stand up, please? This young lady was removed from her home because she had a voucher, and they no longer accept vouchers at her community. So we organized all of us together and made a flyer with our own money and hit the streets passing out flyers to every resident. There's some residents in here right now can stand up and tell you they were joyful because they had no information on this. We spoke to some of your agencies that hands out the funding, and they were at the courthouse and can relate to the people who did not show up or simply did not know about the resources. We have to do more. Our commissioner has to do more. We cannot sit around and talk in these meetings when people are being displaced because they're not familiar with the resources. We have millions of dollars allotted to our community, but people don't know about it. There's people in their house suffering because they don't know there's rental assistance. I've become so immune to calling and asking. Let me just say this. Shout out to Felicia Stewart. I got mass love for you. You answer the phone when no one else answers the phone. Star C, I think her name was Veronica, educated me very well yesterday, so I was able to inform the residents of the different resources that are available because it's so confusing. It's so confusing. They just know that there's money available, so they're calling and they're asking for help, and then they're filling out application, turning in documents, waiting months to only get denied. I got a problem with that. This morning, I woke up at 1:30. There's a young lady on Facebook Messenger. It messaged me, please, I seen you talking on I need improvement housing in Georgia. Can you please help me with rental? I live in Cobb County. This lady is pregnant with twins. I don't know if you're in the audience today because I've never met you, but I invited her to the meeting. I even offered her to come pick her up, to bring her, because she had no transportation. These are the type of things I'm doing. It's not that I'm coming up against you. I'm working with you. I'm supporting you. I don't want to see you fall and fail because when you do, we do. Let me just say this. I'm so passionate, and I know every time I talk, I know something's going to happen to me, just like I got approved. I'm not even going to go to the situation. This. I found a paid $475 to apply to an apartment I didn't know I was going to get. Thank God I contacted the board. Thank God I went to the point of contacting Congressman Scott's office. Thank God they took the effort to contact her and say, what's going on with Ms. Johnson? Thank God I received a letter that says that the new apartment was approved. However, I received a notification yesterday saying my voucher may be terminated because they say I neglected to turn in income, but they say Eric turned in every income except this one income statement, which I can prove that I did. But those are the type of things that I face because I'm out here standing up. But I will not sit down. That's right. I won't sit down. I can't sit down. I stand for everybody and I stand for myself. When I'm fighting for myself, I don't really have time to fight for nobody. You know, somebody asked me, do you get paid for this? I said, you'll be fighting you in the street. No, I don't get a dime for this. But you know what? I get to see these people smile, get up, and keep fighting because that's what I was taught to do.
Ms. Johnson, I'm sorry, your time is up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Perry?
Perkins.
I'm sorry, Ms. Perkins.
Hi, my name is Breon Perkins, and this upcoming year I'll be a senior at Bennett College for Women in Greensboro, North Carolina, and also I am Miss Monica Delancey's daughter, and today I will be speaking about We Thrive in Riverside Renters Association highlights. So, We Thrive in Riverside Renters Association provides opportunities for renters to become civically engaged in the community. We provide workshops on renters empowerment, academic success, routes to home ownerships, and community engagement. We can encourage building coalitions, and through these efforts have proven successful results over the 14 years we have existed here in Cobb County. We Thrive in Riverside Renters Association highlights. In 2009, Ms. Monica Delancey formed We Thrive on the Drive. Also hosted the first National Night Out Against Crime event. In 2012, We Thrive in Riverside Association hosts academic success workshops. In 2014, we was instrumental in mobilizing minority crossing apartments residents to attend South-Cobb Redevelopment Authority meetings and the Cobb County Board of Commissioner meetings in order to seek assistance in relocating funds. In 2017, We Thrive in Riverside won the Mapleton Day Community Award for $1,500. 2017, we was also recognized as a resident leader with the Atlanta Neighborhood Partnership and was chosen to attend the Community Leadership Training in Los Angeles, California. In 2018, We Thrive Riverside received Atlanta Community Foundation grant to support National Night Out Against Crime event and other community initiatives for $3,000. In 2019, We Thrive Riverside Renters Association was instrumental in assisting residents to seek support in their maintenance requests at their apartment complex. With these efforts, some residents won their claims, and in this year, House Bill 346 was passed, in which states that no resident should be retaliated against for reporting maintenance issues. In 2020, We Thrive in Riverside Renters Association received $10,000 Hunger-Free America grant to provide civic engagement opportunities in communities. In 2021, We Thrive in Riverside Renters Association received $50,000 Open Winfrey Charitable Foundation grant to assist with rental assistance. We Thrive in Riverside Renters Association resources are filled in the gap resources, such as U-Haul truck, storage, lodging meals, gas/transportation, utility bill assistance, and love offerings. In 2021, we are currently working with 9 families in the Thriving Family Project, who will receive $2,000 average amount over the 6-month period once they complete the Thriving Families Project in August. 47,000 families received $1,000 on their rent in February of this year. 35 families received $200 $200 on their rent, and 10 families receive utility assistance, moving expenses, or storage assistance. And Resource Connection Month meetings provide monthly assistance as well. We Thrive Riverside Association operates on a shoestring budget, and our primary focus are providing workshops to empower residents. The work continues as we continue to partner and thrive. Upcoming events such as National Night Out Against Crime Parade, August 1st in the Riverside community, as well as during the month of September 18th through the 24th will be Winter's Rights Week. Thank you and have a good day.
Mr. Delancey?
Thank you. Monica Delancey, We Thrive in Riverside Renters Association. First, I would like to thank Mr. William Tanks, always a firefighter, always saving people. My daughter was out parking, and somehow she ended up on the curb. I guess she drives like me. But he immediately, I guess, put on that firefighter hat and went out there and moved the car for her. So I want to thank Mr. Tanks, always doing that. So, Brianna, when you're back in North Carolina, you're not going to have the Cobb County Fire Department unless they're going to go 6 hours up the road. They probably will for me. But thank you for that. Second, I'd like to thank our community, our supporters, our residents for coming out. Early this morning, I believe they started receiving texts from me at 7 o'clock this morning, right? Okay, we got to get ready. We have to go to this meeting. And some people called to remind me. I forgot I said I was going to pick them up. And they called to remind me what time you're coming. And that's what it takes, because they know the sense of urgency for being here at the Cobb County Board of Commissioners meeting. And yes, we're here to discuss how is it that someone with a safety net voucher, such as a housing insurance voucher, is displaced from their home. Now, we get it, you know, people are displaced because of non-payment or what have you, but this young lady, Susan, chose Azure Apartments 2 years ago as her home, and at the time, they didn't tell her that they were going to be not utilizing housing choice vouchers. And so this young lady made a home for her daughter and grandchild, became connected in the community. The way Susan met We Thrive in Riverside Rental Association was through Christmas cards that was posted on their door. And when she called, she said, you know, I would like to come to the Christmas party. But after the Christmas party, she found about other things that we were doing in the community and stayed connected. And that's why she's hoping that she could be rehoused in the community, right? But we're seeing that that's going to be a challenge. The only thing that may be of offer, which is a wait list, are apartments that are standing on the last leg. Okay? And I told her, I said, hey, Courtney. I said, hey, I'm not going to encourage you to go to a place where it's already standing on its last leg, right? I want the apartments to be nice. Nice like the one that we read in the paper that's going to be built, I guess, sometime this year. But we didn't get a notice to attend this meeting. People that know attend the meeting don't even have a lease. They live with their parents. Okay? So how are they going to this meeting about apartment complex coming in when the rent is going to be $1,300 a month for just a one-bedroom? But yes, I get it. You invite people to the meeting that's going to be in agreement with you. So you don't want nobody in the meeting that's going to say, wait, hello, how is it that a community that you know that is, every public school is a Title I school? Every public school means that the families are struggling to feed their children, but yet we can justify a new apartment building coming in that's going to go for nobody that's already in the community. So we want to maintain people that's already living in the community. Just like Ms. Tina said, if people move out the community, they have to wait a year to participate in sports. So what are we going to do to help the people that's right here, right now? Well, you know, I understand if you just go ahead and start and build a whole nother community, then therefore eventually those people fade out. Because that's the message you sent when you decided to have that meeting without the people that live in the community. So therefore, if you're going to have another meeting, I understand the ship has already sailed. The next meeting needs to be with the South Cobb Redevelopment Authority, because the land where the Magnolia Crossing was previously on, that's going to have to be the location where we're going to have housing for everyone. Because therefore, if the apartment complex that's going to be built on City View is not going to take Section 8 vouchers, we're going to have to match it to a new place that will. Because that's the way to make this whole. Okay? And that's the message we would like to send. And thankfully, we will continue to fight, continue to partner. As you heard, from 14 years of living in the community, there's been significant improvement. There's been significant coalition building. There's been more residents saying, hey, we want to find out about renters' rights, renters' empowerment. Because as you look at the number, it's majority of renters. Thank you very much. We have a nice evening. Morning.
Chairwoman, there's one additional speaker, Ms. Omega.
Thank you. Hello. I put on my wedges today, so I'm a little taller, so the mic can come up. Grand Rising again. This conversation, this topic is just so near and dear to my heart. As I expressed last time when I sat before you all, or stood before you all rather, from being an elected official from Miami, Florida, from holding a seat in Coconut Grove, Florida, which was at one point in time inhabited by 35,000 Bahamians, of which I am a fourth generation descendant of Bahamians, to now see the same community not even have 1,200. And we say, well, how does this happen? How does this happen to a community? How does a community lose a community? You lose a community, you lose a community not by chance, but by choice. And this is what is happening here, across, not just here, but across the nation. I resigned from my seat as the youngest elected council member of Coconut Grove, Miami, Florida, to move back here to Georgia. And I did it because I felt led to also join the fights, but I did it because out of a need with COVID, with being not able to make the same type of monies that were going to be needed once everything settled. And this is what we're talking about right now. We are being, and when I say we, I mean we the community, we the people of the community are being forced, and I'm using strong language because this is a strong topic, we're being forced to make do back with paying back rent, with going back to work, with throwing our children back in schools, when even as of right now, a new strain of the COVID, of COVID has been recognized. And when you're forcing your community to do this, you're forcing our parents out of the homes. You're forcing eventually the families out of the community because they can no longer afford to. Pay for it. We are seeing something. It may be new to us, but this is not something that is new to what's been happening here in America. This is not something new to our nation. We want to, again, ask that aggressive legislation is made to empower the residents of these communities. The same residents that build up the culture of these communities are now being uprooted and being told that you can't afford to stay in the same place where your kids have gone to school, where your kids have made friends. This is not something, like I said, this is not new. This is not new, so I want to stop pretending. I want us to be honest. I want us to stop pretending like we don't know how this happens. We know how this happens, and we know who it happens to. It happens to black women. It happens to black families. And it happens in our communities across the nation. Georgia is not a unique, Georgia is not a unique situation. Again, from Miami, but lived in Philadelphia, lived in Tempe, Arizona. Anywhere where you find a community where our inhabitants are a black, where the residents are the culture of the community are Black, you're going to find the eviction rates are 4 times the amount of any demographic. You all have not just the power, but a lot of influence. Representation matters. I behoove you, please. Aggressive legislation now. Yes. Empower our residents. Stop uprooting us. Yes. Where do we go from here? Yes. Where do we go from here? Ask yourselves that question. If this was happening to your sister, your daughter, your mother, how would you fight it? Because unfortunately, it might be. If I, as an elected official, could face an eviction, my first year on the dais, it dang sure might be happening to you and yours. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not one more eviction.
Thank you.
Chairwoman, that concludes the speakers.
Thank you. We will move into commissioner comments, and before we do that, I just want to let those in our audience and those watching by TV know that we will have a work session following the Board of Commissioners meeting that I will ask that begin at 11:15 to provide an adequate break between this meeting and give the commissioners enough time for their comments. In that work session, we will have an update regarding our ERA program, which addresses eviction assistance, and it would be helpful for those who do have questions or concerns about the monies we received to please stay for that presentation so that you can hear us speak with those who are helping us to be able to disperse those monies. Thank you. With that, I'll turn things over to Commissioner Gambrill.
Thank you. The community is encouraged to join us. This is the 4th year that the Cobb County Islamic Centers are coming together to prepare school backpacks to be distributed to many in Cobb and Marietta schools. The group would like to distribute over 2,500 backpacks, and if you would like to contribute, you can learn more by calling 678-554-6748 or bring the assembled backpacks, and you can see the list of items that they're asking to be included in each backpack to 3861 Ernest W. Barrett Parkway, Southwest Marietta, Georgia 30064. This list will also be in my newsletter this coming week. The Mobile Career Center stops at our libraries. The WorkSource Cobb Mobile Career Center is visiting our Cobb County Public Library locations to provide free access to its computer lab, internet connection, and workforce and job skills development resources. The WorkSource Cobb MCC will be at the North Cobb Regional Library today, which is located at 3535 Old 41 Highway Northwest in Kennesaw from 10 o'clock to 3 p.m. today, and again on Thursday, July 15th from 10 to 3 as well. For more information, you can call 770-801-5320. And lastly, we are celebrating our National Parks Month this month. Nearly 100 youth participated in this year's Cobb Parks Fishing Rodeo at Lost Mountain Park. Special thanks to Georgia Department of Natural Resources and our Cobb staff that was there. And the Natural Resources brought a trailer full of fishing supplies for the participants. Over 30 fish were caught, weighed, measured, and released. Fun was had by all, including our chair and her family. The competition was open to children ages 3 to 16, and trophies were handed out to our 5 biggest fish overall. So congratulations to our winners. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you. All right, so from the office, got the upcoming town hall this Thursday. We'll be doing a lot of updates on the priorities that we've set for our district, but also all the programs and all of the wonderful members of our community that help to pull everything together, from the state to representative from federal level, as well as our local CID, Truist Park, and so on and so forth. So a full night of updates. And then just want to make sure that everyone does participate. We have 2 surveys that are currently active. The first is an application survey, so this is for our master plan ambassadors. I will be making selections this week and next week as we embark on building our master plans for our district. And then mobility survey, this is our tandem survey that we're doing with some specific questions around what we would like to see in the district regarding mobility, where those investments can go, and this goes in tandem with the CTP survey that was completed. So highly encouraging everyone to also complete this as well. And you can find all of this information on the d2cobb.com website, which has all of the programs and opportunities and just news updates for what's going on in the district. Community updates. We'll just share one for this time around, Cobb Sheriff's Coffee Connection. So this will be taking place at Rev Coffee, a very popular spot. The Sheriff's Community Engagement Unit is holding a Coffee Connection event at Rev Coffee Roasters located at 1680 Spring Road in Smyrna. This is an opportunity to come say hello or ask questions that you may have while enjoying your morning coffee. And this will be taking place Thursday morning from 7 to 9 a.m. And that concludes my announcements.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burrow?
Thank you. Well, the fishing rodeo moves to District 3 this weekend on Saturday to Ebenezer Downs Park at 4057 Ebenezer Road. I hear that the District 1 rodeo last week was a huge success, so come on out, bring your fishing poles and your bait, and have some fun. It will be Saturday morning, July 17th from 9 to 11. Next slide. We have our senior services hosts veterans meetings throughout the month, and the next one will be Wednesday, July 21st at the Tim D. Lee Senior Center. And Officer Justice from the Cobb Police Community Affairs Unit will be our speaker. So if you're a veteran or know of a veteran, or if you would like to just come and hear what they're about, it will be Wednesday, July 21st at 1 p.m. Our next How to Do Business with Cobb webinar will be at noon Wednesday, July 21st. It's a free information session, and this month we will highlight the Department of Public Safety and Fire and the type of business opportunities that are out for bid for that. For more information, you do need to register, but it is a free event virtually. You can go to cobbcounty.org/doing-business. Okay, I think we're up to 193 of 200 pet adoptions from Cobb County Animal Services for our veterans. Free adoptions, thanks to Superior Plumbing donations. And this is Mr. Pitts, who adopted this precious black and tan Chihuahua last week. Thank you, Mr. Pitts, for your 2 years of service to the U.S. Army and your support of this program. Last week, I was honored to be able to attend the ceremony for Major Justin Cunningham, U.S. Air Force, transitioning to the Space Force. It was quite an honor to be there and witness this. Major Justin Cunningham is the son of Jay Cunningham, who's our Superior Pet for Patriotic Vets program, and he transferred from the U.S. Air Force to the U.S. Space Force, and he's a graduate of Sprayberry High School, and his wife is also a major in the Air Force, and she performed the swearing-in ceremony for him. So it was quite an honor to witness this, and it was held at Chattahoochee Tech's Veterans Center, which is named for his grandfather, Jim Cunningham. Okay, as you heard earlier, the public meetings and hearings for the budget and the millage continue next Tuesday, July 20th at 6:30 p.m. will be both a budget and millage hearing. And then adoption of both and a public hearing, final public hearing for the millage, 7 p.m. July 27th. And they're all right here in this room. I'd also like to invite you all to come to a special event that Honorary Commanders Association is hosting with the county at the Cobb Civic Center on July 29th at 10 a.m. This event is free, but you do need to register because we need a head count. Some of you may have remembered Colonel Patricia Blassie that was here, stationed at Dobbins a few years ago, and she is going to be telling her brother's story of the unknown soldier and his journey and everything she did to get him identified. So he was killed in action during the Vietnam War, and he was originally buried in the tomb of the unknown soldier, and in 1998, DNA tests helped identify First Lieutenant Blassie and return his remains to his family. So it will be a very inspiring story, and we invite you all to attend. But you do need to register. And then for more information on things going on in District 3 and the county, please sign up for my newsletter, cobbcounty.org/Burl. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sheffield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I cordially invite you to join me, Cobb Works, Cobb Police, Cobb Sheriff's Office, nonprofit organizations, and direct hire employers and recruiting agencies on Saturday, July 31st from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Cobb County Public Safety Police Training Academy for Career Fair and Tenant Forum. Employers will be on site offering available job opportunities. Nonprofits will be on site to discuss the application process for COVID relief funds, and HUD counselors will be on site to assist in finding landlords that will accept the housing choice vouchers. You may attend the event in its entirety or at any point between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. The address is 2435 East West Connector in Austell. While there has been an overwhelming response to receiving the COVID vaccine, the number of recipients is lower than originally anticipated. In an effort to reduce the spread of the virus and the new variant, a county and community partnership between Mableton Improvement Coalition, Cobb County Parks, Cobb and Douglas Public Health, and the nonprofit Community Organized Relief Effort, or CORE, has been formed to administer free COVID vaccinations at the Mabel House Complex located at 5239 Floyd Road from 8:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. on July 15th and 22nd, and then again on August 5th and 12th. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine will be administered. Clients must be 18 years of age and older. You can make a reservation online at cobbdouglaspublichealth.com. Congratulations again to Kenneth for qualifying for the Summer Olympics in Tokyo. We wish him well and have expectations that he will bring home the gold. On Saturday, July 10th, at Reflections of Trinity, Deidre and Team 58 Community Food Pantry was joined by Keisha Bryant from the Center for Family Resources and other members of Keisha's family to distribute food boxes to the communities. Reflections of Trinity is a nonprofit agency located in Powder Springs. The organization began distributing food boxes in 2012. As of today, 32 counties in Georgia are serviced through their efforts. For the first 6 months of the year, Reflections of Trinity has served nearly 14,000 families. Every Saturday, beginning at 9 a.m., anyone that requires food assistance can receive a box of food, a warm smile, and lots of encouragement from those who are volunteering. If you need assistance with food or groceries, the food pantry is located at 4037 Austell Powder Springs Road in Powder Springs, Georgia. To volunteer with Reflections, please visit reflectionsoftrinity.org. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right. We can scroll to the next slide. As I've shared many times, we've identified 5 goals which are a priority for this board for this year. And we can move to the next slide, the first one being COVID response and recovery. Sorry. We can go to the next slide. Our first goal is to address COVID response and recovery, and we had our update today from Public Health. You've heard the numbers that she shared and the concern about the upward trend of the variant. We will do our best to encourage the public to get vaccinated. We have seen the numbers show us that vaccinations have increased, the rate of transmission have decreased. And so we want to do our best to keep the public safe. It certainly is an individual choice, but it does have a public burden because of the public response that's needed as more people get infected. Therefore, we are encouraging people for the sake of public health to please get vaccinated. And there are many events that will be held throughout the county for persons to do so. And I appreciate Commissioner Sheffield sharing that event. And there were several shared on the Department of Public Health calendar that I would encourage residents to consider. We can move past the COVID update slides. Again, just a slide recognizing the Delta variant has been increasing. With respect to housing and also connected to the pandemic, we do have 5 organizations who will be presenting here today, and I've seen some of them come into the room, and thank you for being here, but want to list their contact information for those watching, for people to know that they are helping people to receive ERA money to stem evictions. And we hope that people will take advantage of this and that residents will reach out to commissioners as they're having hardship. This is a very difficult dilemma, and it's been recognized in our presentations that it's not just a Cobb County issue, and these issues are national issues. But every person's issue is their own issue. It's unique. And as much as we can look at this as a whole, we found as we've had people call in and we've assisted people that sometimes it does take a little bit of case management to figure out how we can help individuals. So if someone is having difficulty, please continue to reach out to commissioners. I know that my office, and at least I'm aware of Commissioner Sheffield's office, has been quite responsive in trying to help people as much as we can on an individual basis. The unfortunate reality, and we'll learn more of the presentation that follows, is that some people have had challenges with housing that are not necessarily tied to the pandemic. And so that's where we do run into there being some difficulty with drawing down those funds. But certainly we are here to do our best because we want to see no family go without housing. You can move to the next slide. And sometimes I share too much, and this is perhaps one of those times that I may do so, but I think it's important to share. I think there's a misnomer that those of us up here cannot or do not relate, that some of us up here have not dealt with housing issues, unemployment issues. I can speak from my own personal situation at a time where both my husband and I were unemployed and having to get services that many people have been coming up here and speaking about. I know there have been some other instances in other families and households of commissioners who are up here. We are not as disconnected as we may seem. We provide this as an opportunity for people to share. We know this is probably one of the most difficult times that people can have in someone's home. We want you to know that as mothers, as women, we are sensitive to this. Please know that. And we are doing our best and want to continue to do that, recognizing the crisis that we're in. But we are not as disconnected as what may be perceived. Again, today at 11:15, we'll start our special called BOC work session to receive an update on our program and to, again, find out how we can continue to get this money out to our residents. Wanted to share about our police. They have been putting out several videos to address policing policy. And I just want to give them a shout out for their diligence in doing this, because during the pandemic, we have had social justice issues come to the national spotlight, and we want to let people know what we're doing at home to address some of the concerns that have been shared on these policing issues. So if we can scroll to the next screen, you can see on our YouTube channel that we have several videos that have been published to address use of force, body cameras, license plate readers, recruitment, qualified immunity, police response to individuals in crisis. We want you to know what we're doing so that we can show you that our police are doing as much as they can to be responsive to the concerns of our community during this time. We are in a special election runoff today. If you have not voted and you are in House District 34, please get out and vote between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And moving on to our next slide, I want to let people know that absentee ballot applications for the November 2nd election can be submitted between August 16th and October 22nd. There have been some people who've been submitting requests for those applications prior to then. You will need to actually make your request during this time frame to receive your ballot before November. As many of you are quite aware, our state laws of an election have changed, and this is one of those changes that I want you to be very much aware of so that you can be empowered to vote. As much as we have been limited in what we can do at the local level, what we can do is educate you. And I want to educate you that if you would like to get an absentee ballot for the November election, which there will be municipal elections, and there will also be a vote for our school SPLOST, please request your ballot again between these two dates of August 16th and October 22nd. As was shared earlier during our BOC meeting today, we will have public hearings to address the 2021 millage and our fiscal year 2022 budget. On Tuesday, July 13th today, we had our budget presentation, no public hearing, and our millage presentation and public hearing. At a special called meeting on Tuesday, July 20th at 6:30 p.m., we will have a public hearing for both the budget and the millage. Finally, on Tuesday, July 27th, we will adopt our budget and have our millage public hearing and adoption. Getting on to some fun things. I think my voice is hoarse just from all of the events that I've been attending over the past several weeks, but this is just a fun event that I had recent opportunity to attend that was held by leaders within our Spanish-speaking community, and you can see representation of our sheriff's office there, a video of that yet, but we certainly had a good time and just impressed upon them that Cobb County is an inclusive county for everyone. We can go on to our next slide. Had fun this past weekend in District 1 with the fishing rodeo. Our very own Michael Brantley has helped to teach my son how to fish. Next time I'll need you to actually help him catch a fish. I enjoyed being out there, but he was distraught that he had no fish in hand when he left. So we will be making our way to the other rodeos. We will. I think I have something at 9, but I will somehow get Noah Cupid out there because he's determined to catch a fish. But it was certainly a lot of fun, and glad that Commissioner Gamble was out there, and just many people of Parks and Recreation, and even the state was out there helping families to enjoy a great day of fishing. And there we have one of the 4th place finishers on the left. and want to say thank you. Thank you to everyone that helped to make July 4th here in the county a very festive day. I owe a very special thank you to Jimmy Giese and to Michael Brantley for putting together our float, which hopefully will become award-winning, which is there on the right. We had rocking chairs that we got to sit on as we cruised down the parade, and just had a festive time. And you cannot not have a festive time when Commissioner Brohl shows up, not only with the red shirt, but a red hat. So she certainly was queen of the day, and just was a great time to celebrate freedom in our country. With that, contact information is there. Thank you for being here for today's presentation. Now we have about a 5-minute break between now and 11:15 for our next work session. Thank you. so-called work session. We have a first agenda item here today, which is to receive a presentation from our district attorney. Dr. McMorris, would you like to add anything?
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chairwoman Cupid, the Board of Commissioners. I'll be brief. A few months ago, we had been approached by the DA's office and some of our judges to share information about some of the programs that are ensuing in the next few months. And due to scheduling issues and some conflicts, we weren't able to bring this presentation to the board at that time. But today, we're excited to hear from our DA and some of the stakeholders in a program that he wants to share, after which we will hear from our nonprofit organizations as an update on how we're doing with our ERA funding. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to the District Attorney's Office.
Thank you, Dr. McMorris.
Good afternoon. Is it afternoon?
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, good morning, Board.
Good morning.
You know, first, I want to say it's been my pleasure to serve as a district attorney these past several months, and the cooperation that I've gotten from the board and also the stakeholders that are here today has been invaluable in what we're trying to do. Since taking office, I've garnered a new appreciation in how many different components of the criminal justice system work together to ensure public safety in our community. Our restorative justice initiatives focus on rehabilitation and treatment of nonviolent low-level offenders, while at the same time removing the most dangerous and violent offenders from our community. Our presentation today, I titled it, The Relationship Between Drugs and Crime. And the reason I titled it that is because for most young offenders, the first problem that they have in the criminal justice system relates to drugs. That is the first indication of any adverse behavior that they have. And usually that drug use leads to addiction, which then leads to larger crimes. And with those larger crimes, we see school failure, we see lack of employment productivity, and we just see an overall discontent with being a productive citizen. Our mission at the District Attorney's Office, and this is just part of it here, is to enhance public safety. And I know when we talked to the board earlier, considering us public safety was not something that you did, but we worked together with the criminal justice system, with our law enforcement officers, Chief Cox, the Marietta PD, the Circuit Defender's Office, the Superior Court judges, and with that sole purpose of increasing public safety in our community. And part of that, my goal is to make sure that we reduce recidivism. And the way we want to do that is by using some of our guiding principles. And this is just 3 of about 10 of those principles. The first one being to recognize mental illness and substance abuse disorder in our community as a health problem. And I want to emphasize this. As I said before, most first offenders, when they first come into the system, the first problem that they have is some kind of drug use. And those drug use ends up leading to further and further crimes, which makes our community less safer. Our second guiding principle on here is being collaborative with our government and law enforcement partners. We have to work together in order to be effective and to make our community safe. And one of the things that we've done in our office is we've designated prosecutors to seek and put people in diversion into accountability courts, with the effort being focused on restoring them back to the community as productive citizens. And we believe by doing that, we reduce recidivism rates, which makes our community safer. These are some facts that I think all of us need to know in Georgia. First of all, Georgia has the highest incarceration rate in the country. 40% of Georgians have a criminal record. That showed the reason why the help desk was so important for our community, is to enable those people to remove those criminal charges from their record whenever possible, so that they could go on with their life and be productive. Our state also has over 200,000 people under probation and parole. And whether anybody realized that, that really keeps them from being able to get good jobs, keeps them from being able to get housing. And I listened earlier, she's not in here now, but she was talking about the housing issue that we have in this county and how important it is. When people lose their housing, it means they can't get a job. It means that they end up having to find other means in order to survive. And lots of times they turn to crime to do that. In Georgia, approximately 2 out of 3 people, when they're released from prison, recidivate, which means they commit more crimes. The way we've done it in the past has not worked. And that's why we're going forward with a new direction. We've got a 2-tiered approach. And that approach is for diversion and accountability courts to be at the forefront of our criminal justice system. Now, just to mind you, this is for nonviolent offenders, those offenders who are not of physical harm to anyone in the community. For those that are physical harm to those in the community, we want to put them in jail, and keep them out of our community in order to make our community safe. Here in Cobb County, for our Superior Court, we have 5 accountability courts. Our drug court run by Judge Staley Clark, our intermediate drug court run by Judge Childs, our mental health court run by Judge Harris, who also runs the Parental Accountability Court, and also a Veterans Court run by Judge Kell. We also have 2 accountability courts in our juvenile. A juvenile drug court run by Judge Patterson, and also what we call a rising program run by Judge Granis, which focuses on youthful offenders who are at risk for being involved in potential gang activity. Now, our accountability courts, their focus is on treatment and rehabilitation, criminal thinking, and responsibility, while at the same time holding each participant accountable for their actions. A successful completion of an accountability court or a diversion program results in a dismissal of charges, allowing the person to re-engage in the community in a positive manner. If you have not been to a graduation, I strongly encourage you to attend one. And I know Commissioner Burrow has been to graduations, and I think I've even seen her cry at graduation. Our diversion programs are an alternative to prosecution for those nonviolent offenders. And one of the things I'll tell you about our diversion programs, I want to read you some numbers to tell you why it's so important that what we're trying to do, we do. In 2018, in pretrial diversion, we enrolled 178 people. 152 successfully graduated pretrial diversion. In 2019, we enrolled 198 people. 147 successfully graduated. In 2020, despite the pandemic, we enrolled 200 people and 177 successfully graduated. This year alone, 6 months in, we've already enrolled 169 and had 112 graduates. We've opened up the diversion to the point that we are now receiving 25 applications per week. That is 25 individuals that we have an opportunity to have treatment provided for them and get them back to the community as productive citizens. So I think that is critical. But there are some obstacles. The economic burden on offenders, the cost of that treatment. The cost is their evaluations, their weekly or monthly counseling, the drug testing that they have to do. All those things factor into who can successfully complete diversion, who can successfully complete an accountability court. One of the things that we have not focused on in the past is trauma-related treatment. And because of that, we have failed to uncover some of the underlying problems that cause these people to seek out addictions or to implement their addictions. The other problem we have is there's been too much time between offense and the enrollment in the treatment program. In the past, it has taken, especially with the pandemic, the numbers have even pushed out further, 2 to 3 years for somebody to actually enroll in either a diversion or an accountability court. And for most of those people, that is too late. Either one of two things have happened. Either their addictions have gotten so bad that we can't bring them back, or 2, they've gotten their life back together and now we're going to put a stop to it. So why is this important, and why now? Well, these are numbers that I pulled from the Department of Health, and they're from 2016. Out of the three highest counties, or the three largest counties, or three of the four largest counties, Cobb County is number 2 when it comes to opioid deaths in 2016. We're number 2. We're also number 2 when it comes to overdoses. And in Georgia, from 2010 to 2016, the rise in overdose deaths was 117%. It went from 426 a year to 929 deaths a year. And the sad part about that is Cobb County leads the way when it comes to per capita number of deaths at 13.8. For a lot of people coming into the criminal justice system is what they need to help them to get through this. But for far too many of them, we don't get to them, and they end up on this list. That's why it's important that what we're trying to do through our criminal justice system, through the collaboration, through the partnerships with our stakeholders, is to make a change on this. There we go. Our early intervention case management system is specifically designed to address this issue. First, early identification of those who are eligible for diversion and accountability courts. And the plan to do this, and this is with cooperation with the jail, is to identify those people who may be eligible as soon as their first appearance. Giving them a court date of 30 to 45 days after that initial court appearance, letting them know that one of two things need to happen. One, you get an attorney because you're going to qualify for this program to enroll you in the program. The second one, if you don't and can't afford an attorney, one will be assigned to you at that hearing. And Randy from the Circuit Defender's Office is here, and he has told us that he will make sure that his people are there prepared to help these people out. By getting them early enrolled, we can get them to the treatment as quick as possible, and that's the key to success. The sooner we can get them into treatment, the sooner we can get them into counseling, the sooner we can bring them back to the community as productive citizens, but not just as productive citizens, but also people that have gotten over their addictions. We have laid out a series of coursework and counseling that we want to put in place, and we are working on the partners to make that happen. Some of those counselings include moral recognition therapy, thinking for change, thinking for good, the Well Recovery Action Plan, cognitive behavioral interventions for substance abuse, seeking safety, relapse prevention, occupational therapy, experiential therapy. All these classes are designed to take that person who has shown that they have addiction issues, to provide them the counseling and the therapy that they need, that when they return back to the community, we reduced our recidivism rates from 66% down to 10%. And needless to say, that's going to make our community safer. Because as I told you before, 2/3 of the people who come from jail, they recidivate. And lots of times that is because we've put them in a position where we give them a criminal charge, and that criminal charge does not allow them to get a good job, does not allow them to get good housing, does not allow them to provide for their family. And I don't know about you, but if I'm in that position, I'm going to do whatever I can to survive. And then sometimes that means turning to criminal behavior. It is our responsibility, because this is our community, to make sure that we provide for them so they don't have to do that. This program will also minimize the economic consequences of those offenders. Because what happens when somebody sits in the jail for 6 months waiting to be released because they can't pay bond? They lose their job. They lose their home. Sometimes they lose their family. But also those people who are asking about assistance for rental assistance, they are the ones who are the victims when we hold people in jail for nonviolent offenses. And like I said, please don't get it wrong that we're trying to let people out of jail who are a harm to this community, because that's not what we're doing. For those who are harmed, we plan to keep them in jail as long as possible until they come to court and are sentenced for their jail time, because that's how we make this community safer. The goal is to restore the nonviolent offenders, those people who have not gotten so far that they become a harm. Because like I started off with the name of this presentation, the relationship between drugs and crime. When we don't address those drug issues at the beginning, what happens, those people become our murderers. They become our rapists. They become the terrors that we are afraid of. And that's why we have to do something, and we have to do it sooner, and we have to do it better. But what this does, because we've taken away those issues from our judges, we've allowed them to free up their time for those violent criminals that we want to put away. So it makes our criminal justice system much more efficient. I know I've said a lot, but I want to say this before I finish. These initiatives involve all our stakeholders within the criminal justice system. Our Superior Court judges, our Superior Court Clerk, Connie Taylor, our Chief Magistrate Judge, Brendan Murphy, who's here today, our Sheriff, Craig Owens, Randy from the Circuit Defender's Office, and of course the District Attorney's Office. We want to balance these initiatives while at the same time effectively prosecuting our dangerous criminals in order to make our community as safe as possible. And since jury trials have started up, my assistant district attorneys have tried, I believe, over 13 cases. And we've put a lot of bad people away, to include a couple of murderers. And we will continue to do that because that's what we're here for, to ensure that public safety is first and foremost in our mind. This is a new approach, yes. But I like to say it's a better way of doing things. It's doing things the right way the first time so we don't have to go back and do them again. I used to always have a saying with my soldiers, you know, you always got time to do it a second time, but you never have time to do it right the first time. Let's stop focusing on the second time and let's do everything right the first time. And I think this approach will do that for our community. It restores people back in the community who deserve to be restored. It allows us to focus on public safety by making sure that those people do not become the criminals that we are afraid of. And I think with this approach, our collaborative partners, our stakeholders understand how important this is and are willing to work to make this happen. And that's why we're coming to you. That's why we ask for those new positions. That's why we're trying to ensure that public safety is our focus and the focus of this community, the focus of this board. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you for that informative and powerful presentation. Commissioners, do any of you have any questions for our DA? I have a question. So the programs that have been initiated are to assist those that are nonviolent offenders. However, your presentation, started off by speaking about, the connection between lower-level offenses and drugs. I presume that may be a main impetus, but are the programs that you are putting forward and the positions moving forward, are they associated with all of those offenders of lower-level crime, or are they just particularly with drug-related offenses that you see?
They are for all the offenders, Chairwoman.
I'm sorry?
They are for all the offenders.
Okay.
With our partners, what they've asked us to do is to start off slowly by focusing on those with substance abuse problem and mental health problems. And then from there expand it to our other nonviolent offenders.
Okay. Very good. Well, thank you. Again, I appreciate you taking time to present this, and the data was very helpful. And you may be aware, and the public may be aware, that Cobb County is participating in a bellwether case to address the opioid epidemic that's occurred nationally, and Cobb is one of a handful of counties that will be putting forward our evidence with respect to that before a judge. And so, we hate to be leading in such an effort, but of the opioid use, overdose, and deaths, but we're grateful to be leading also in starting to address this epidemic across the country. And so I see that dovetailing with the work that you're doing, and I think the commissioners are sensitive to that issue in our county.
Thank you for allowing me to present today, and thank you for your consideration for our future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have our ERA presentation, and I see Attorney Blair moving up towards the front.
Good morning, Debbie Blair with the County Attorney's Office.
Thank you.
And I'm not here to speak to you for long. There's going to be others behind me. But as you are aware, we received through the federal government $22.8 million in emergency rental assistance, and we, the board, approved 5 providers to distribute those funds throughout the county, that being Sweetwater Mission, Must Ministries, the Center for Family Resources, Home Free, and Star C. They were approved, I believe it was on the March agenda. There was quite a bit of ramping up that they needed to do for administrative purposes. There's quite a bit of reporting that Treasury is requiring of the provider, so they kind of had to get those pieces in place. Started accepting applications the end of March, April 1st. So up to between April 1st and June 15th, $5.6 million has been distributed of the total funds that we received. And of course, you'll hear those updated numbers today. But I do want to thank all of them for all of their hard work, because it's not an easy job, and they're trying to meet with and take applications, review applications. You'll hear some of those obstacles that they have, but they are working very hard to help us out and get that money distributed. The order of the presentation today, I'm going to introduce Judge Murphy with the Magistrate Court, who will speak briefly upon eviction filings. And then Felicia Stort with Must Ministries is going to be the first provider to make her presentation, and then the rest will follow in no particular order. Judge Murphy?
Good afternoon, Chairwoman, members of the Board of Commission. Good to see you this afternoon. It's always good to get partners in the same room. The DA mentioned the second chance desk, and his office brought a few orders for me to sign while I was here, so we were multitasking. That was great. So I want to just present a little bit of snapshot of where we are in the law on eviction cases right now, where we are on the numbers, and what the court is doing to assist in getting this rental assistance out to the landlords and the tenants that need it. On June 30th of this year, the statewide judicial emergency that had been in place during the entirety of the COVID pandemic expired, and that was initiated by the Georgia Supreme Court. When that statewide judicial emergency expired, all of the statutory and rule-based deadlines were reinstated on courts. So what that means for eviction cases is the court is supposed to hear every eviction case within 2 weeks of the answer being filed. The tenant is supposed to answer the action within 7 days of the action being served on the tenant. So you're talking about from the time the tenant has an eviction affidavit in his or her hand to the time the hearing is to be held is 21 days. That's a very quick timeline. Further, you may have seen the CDC moratorium was extended for 1 more month. The federal partners have indicated that will come to a close at the end of this month on July 31st. Because of the cautious approach that this court and this community has taken to the CDC moratorium, I'm happy to report that there will not be hundreds or thousands of orders that become automatically effective in Cobb County upon expiration. We only have 29 cases as of this morning that have an official stay order in place. Those cases will come back to court in early August and will proceed. But because of the way we've handled the CDC moratorium the entire way, it will not lead to one large potential for evictions right at the end of the expiration. Current update on the case numbers. In a typical year, in the last 3 years, eviction cases in the magistrate court have ranged in the 20 to 21,000 case filings per year. Last year, during the pandemic, the number was less than 11,000. This year, as of this week, there are approximately 6,000 filings. So more than last year, on pace for more than last year, but not as many as in a typical year. As the CDC moratorium's end is approaching, we are seeing more filings coming in. So the rate of filing is increasing. So update about how we're handling it, how we're trying to be proactive with landlords and tenants. There was actually recently, we shared this information yesterday with the chairwoman, the White House held a virtual summit on eviction prevention, and we were invited to participate in that. And there were judges and legal service providers from all over Metro Atlanta, and there was an Atlanta working group portion of that event. And the partners were very interested in our court-based assistance. When you approved the 5 providers that you'll hear from, you also approved 1 temporary position for the magistrate court, and she's here, that's Sarah Stevens, and she's been working hard every day to serve as that bridge between landlords, tenants, and the providers to make sure that both sides understand what's going on so that when rental assistance is proceeding, the eviction case can take a back seat, because we have to make sure that both trains realize on each track what's going on. I want to report that of what we can track, court-based rental assistance, of that 5.6 million, over $1 million of that has touched the court in some way. So I've got 1 temporary position, Sarah Stevens. Now we've pulled other people from our court to assist her, but 1 temporary position helping get over $1 million of the funding that the rental assistance providers have provided out through the court. The real number is probably much higher because there's a lag between when rental assistance, when the check is cut and the dismissal comes through the court, because there are currently approximately 1,400 cases backlogged. So as those cases hit the calendar, we find out they have been dismissed, or they will be dismissed through the rental assistance. So the real number is, I'm sure, much greater than $1 million. Sarah is here, our team, our court administrator, Tanisha Phillips, is here, our rental assistance coordinator, Sarah Stevens, is here. So for those folks that addressed the board earlier, I can't, obviously, I have to remain fair and impartial, can't talk to parties either side about any cases, but if they have any questions about, if anyone has any questions about the status of any particular case, is my hearing coming up, did I file my answer? Sarah Stevens from our clerk's office can answer those questions and get you the answers you need. So thank you again for your investment in our community through this program and through the court piece. And we hope to continue to be a successful partner in this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any
Appreciate
questions
all
for
you've
me?
been doing. No, I think from the
All right.
stats you shared, you said about 20% of those funds that we've received have been going through the court. And so we want to encourage our residents to know that even if they don't hear about the programs prior to actually going to the court, that there are people actively on site helping people there as, a last touch to see if they can qualify for those funds. Very helpful and strategic.
And that's a great point, and that can only happen because of these 5 providers that y'all have selected. Initially, they had committed to come to court once a week. As they saw the success of coming to court, they now come to court twice a week.
Thank you.
And so we're hoping to continue to expand that, because when we bring people together, it's time to make a decision. That's when the rental assistance can really get out to our community.
Thank you. Appreciate that, and thank you to our providers. Yes, Commissioner Burrow.
Thank you very much. Can you identify Ms. Stevens?
Yes,
Can she
this
raise
is
her
Sarah
hand?
Stevens right
Okay,
here in the blue
thank you.
mask. And so Sarah, thank you, Commissioner. Sarah Stevens is here if you have any questions about a case.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. All right. All right. Next up, we have Ms. Stewart from Must Ministries. Have a fan club. Yeah.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Felicia Stewart. I serve as the Vice President of Housing with Must Ministries, and I oversee all of our housing programs, so that's inclusive of our emergency shelter and then the other housing programs that we operate inclusive of the ERA program. So I just wanted a side note. So in referencing the number of applications that we've received to date, this does not necessarily represent how many applications we've distributed. So what we've done to try to ensure that we're providing, number one, the best customer service as possible, being the most responsive, we do an actual pre-screen process. So we don't want individuals applying for rental assistance, they won't necessarily qualify. So after that pre-screen takes place, that's when they're actually emailed out an application and they start the application process. So to date, we have received 546 applications. We currently have 46 applications that are currently in the queue, and we've actually processed, completed, and payments are in process for 408 applications. And we have 67 applications that are status is incomplete. So in terms of the number of applications that we've rejected, it's 71 applications, and I just wanted to briefly highlight the reasons as to why. One of the most prominent reasons is that individuals are unable to provide that COVID hardship. We've had to distinguish between, we've had individuals that have thought just because they've contracted COVID that necessarily would make them qualify. So we've taken some extra measures just to explain what that COVID hardship actually means. But a number of the applications that we have rejected has been for that primary reason. Another reason is for fraudulent documents. We have had a number of individuals that have either given us fraudulent documents from workforce development as well as employers. So we're just taking that extra effort just to establish the validity of the documents, especially when they're coming from employers. Of course, getting authorization from the applicant, but contacting the employer to establish validity of the documents. And then we're having a number of applications that are not coming back complete. We're giving the applicants 15 business days to return those documents that are requested in order to process their application, and if those documents aren't provided in the specified time frame, then they're actually being taken off the queue. And then we've been sending back applications to the originating agency, and that just means if a client has previously worked with Star C or Home Free, we're actually sending those clients back to the agency that they started receiving CARES funding with.
Yes, Ms. Stewart, before you move forward, can you clarify one of the points you made in that having COVID is not enough to demonstrate you have a COVID hardship? Can you clarify that?
Yeah, so what we've had to explain to clients, because we've had some that have just given us a test, but that the time frame that they were out of work during COVID, that they still need to be able to demonstrate that they've been financially impacted, meaning if you were out of work but you weren't compensated, or you lost your job as a result, because we had some individuals that actually contracted COVID. They sustained a large amount of medical bills as well as being out of work a substantial amount of time, and they were let go of their employment. So just making sure that they understand is not just the fact that you contracted COVID, but being able to demonstrate, because I've contracted COVID, this is why I'm unable to pay my bills and unable to pay my rent.
Thank you.
And so to date, we have expended $1.3 million, and our average ERA award is $5,433. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Can we get that last slide up, please? Thank you. Are there any questions from any of our commissioners? Just thank you for taking time to talk to us about MUS Ministries and particularly your work on this program. And I think one point of clarification that I would like to have you just underscore with the audience is that you do that pre-screen prior to them filling out an application.
Correct.
I think that's important because in some of the comments I've heard with respect to persons not being able to get access to funding is that they've taken time to fill out an application then to find out that they don't qualify. And so you can talk a little bit more about that.
So when an individual calls in, we actually have 2 individuals that operate our call center. So they ask any questions and then provide the qualification, then inclusive with the application itself. There's a checklist on front of the application that clearly outlines what represents a COVID hardship. And we do understand that there's some areas of gray, so they can even call back and we can further clarify that. Because we've had it happen with some parents that had to stop working because they had maybe had a child that was more susceptible to contracting COVID, and so they elected to stay home instead of going back to work. So we try to just, as much as possible, try to clear up any confusion as to why individual qualifies.
And that would be considered a COVID hardship if they were home with their child who
Correct.
wasn't attending due to the pandemic.
But we do ask for verification if they say it's because the child is more susceptible to contracting COVID.
Okay, thank you. And then can you give us a sense of when someone contacts us, how much time it takes for them to hear from someone and for the process to actually begin?
We try to return phone calls within 72 hours.
Okay.
Our goal is 48, but max 72 hours. And then to go through the entire process, we normally can process someone within 2 weeks, and that's providing that the landlord provides all the necessary documentation as well, because sometimes that can be a holdup.
Okay.
And then one other point I would like to make, and we've experienced it in the court as well, where we've had some landlords that have refused to accept the payments.
Okay.
So that's been a challenge as well.
Yes, certainly. So there has been a statement made about, there's one state that allows people to go in and get those funds immediately. What would keep us from being able to have someone just walk in and walk away with the check that day?
I would say, I guess it's capacity as well. I guess if you guys allowed additional admin funds, we could bring on additional staff, but it's just having the capacity to process all those applications, because we're aggressively trying to process as many as we can, as fast as we can, but it's also the bandwidth of the staff.
Yes, tell us, how can we help you? What are some of the challenges you have similar to the one that you just shared, that you would say, if Cobb County were to do this, then I could do
Probably
what
if
I
we
need
had
to?
more if we had the capacity to hire more employees, but we have to, of course, work within the confines of our admin as well.
Okay. And we can perhaps have legal speak a little bit about just the limitations we have on the administrative costs associated with the program. Because we're constrained too as how much we can give for funding.
So for our ERA 1, there is only allowed 10% to be split between administrative fees and housing stability fees, which is counseling and that type of thing. We have allowed up to 8% for the service providers. And as well, as I mentioned, tracking is a huge requirement. We are utilizing the services of WFN for follow-up on the back end, and they are receiving 2% of the award. So through the ERA program itself, there is not any additional administrative fees available currently.
Okay. And the program, the federal program itself is constraining us to that 10%?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, Commissioner Richardson.
Processing, is it a highly skilled type of activity, or is that something that could be supplemented by volunteers or something of the sort?
Some of it can. We utilize volunteers. At must, we do a background check on all of our volunteers because, of course, you're dealing with highly sensitive information. So some part of it can be handled by volunteers, and then the rest of it has to be managed by the case manager.
Okay,
That's
thank
a good
you.
question. Thank you.
A question for
Commissioner
Felicia.
Sheffield.
You mentioned that the landlords are being less than cooperative in submitting documents or even accepting payment. Can you share with us some of the feedback that you received from the landlords as to why?
Majority of the time is that they want them out of their property. So it may be some other reason other than non-payment of rent. Could be damages to the property. They could have had issues with the resident that they just want them out of the property.
Are there any additional questions? Yes, Commissioner Burrow.
Of the ones that don't qualify or are rejected, do we know what percentage is because the landlord doesn't approve the fund?
It's a small percentage.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a small percentage.
So basically, the majority is they're just not eligible for whatever reason. It's not COVID-related or
Correct.
some of the other things you mentioned.
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Richardson.
For situations where someone may have lost a job a couple weeks before the pandemic became known as the pandemic, yet they struggle with finding employment as a result of the pandemic in their field, or even something related that could assist with these things, payment for livelihood, how is that treated with regards to the application?
I haven't, with the case manager, because they bring me challenging cases, I have not had that particular case. I've had cases where individuals stopped paying the rent, but could not show a COVID hardship, that they just weren't working. So in that case, we probably would have to flush it out more just to, even in terms of if that individual applied for unemployment and where they are in the process with the unemployment, we'd have to flush it out more.
So I have several colleagues where they filed for the unemployment, they started receiving the unemployment, but of course it wasn't under it had happened a couple weeks before, so they didn't get the same kind of unemployment benefits as a result of the pandemic, and so they're in that in-between time of losing their job, but it's COVID related, but it's not COVID related. So just wanted to know how we were looking at those cases.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And that's something we can go back and discuss because we have a meeting with Debbie after.
Great.
Any other questions?
Yes, a related question and then a comment. For persons who may not have a COVID hardship, does MUST have any other resources available to help families other than the ERA funds?
We have some private donations that can help for those who are currently housed. So we can assist with up to 2 months until those private donations run out, because we have a couple of private donors that can help with that. But we have a significant amount of money for homeless families that we can help with security deposit, application fees, and then first month's rent.
Okay, and do you volunteer that information if someone doesn't qualify for?
Yes, so if anyone that seeks housing assistance, they automatically, whether they're looking for a shelter bed or just looking for rental assistance, they can just go directly to our Elizabeth Inn shelter. And we have intake there Monday through Friday.
Wonderful. And then my comment is really words cannot express the level of gratitude that we have for your efforts, your personal efforts, and that of your team.
Thank you very much.
We have been limited by way of the amount that we can compensate you. Really, you've taken on more work than what we've paid you for to be able to help people who are really at their last wit in trying to retain their housing. We don't know the calls that you receive that could be charged, and we don't know how much you want to help, but are just constrained based off of limitations that you did not put on yourself. We know that you are in this line of work because you want to help people. And if you could help everyone, you would help everyone. We haven't said that enough to you. I don't know how much you're doing. I don't know if it's every day of the week, 5 days. It could be all days. People may be working overtime and not getting compensated enough. So if my words mean anything, I want to express to you my sincerest gratitude. You are owed more than just those words in itself. But on behalf of this board, on behalf of these community members, I want to say thank you. Thank you for the work you've chosen to do to help people at such a significantly difficult time as this. You've gone above and beyond. And I know this from hearing from others, but how you've personally responded to me also when I've reached out to you to help individuals. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's what Felicia before she steps down. Felicia, with a follow-up question to assisting homeless families, is there a process in place to assist before the families become homeless?
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning before. So those are actually private funds that we have. So we have some funding right now. So if a family and they're not pandemic related, we can help them with up to 2 months of rental assistance.
But before they become evicted and before they become homeless is the question that I'm asking. Like if they're facing eviction and they...
Oh, no, that's what I'm speaking of. So if someone comes and says, you know, I'm behind 2 months and I just need my rent paid for 2 months to keep me in my home, we can do that.
Okay.
No. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry.
Well, I guess just for clarification, you mentioned that there is assistance for families that are actually homeless. And my question is there a process in place to transition a would-be homeless family before they become homeless?
You're speaking in terms of if they were actually evicted?
Yes.
Yeah, so with that same pot of money I'm speaking of and helping homeless families, we can help them with hotel assistance. So they would be placed in a hotel, we would pay it for up to 30 days, and then they would be working with the case manager to help them identify a place of residence. But we're also looking at as well if that individual was served better being placed in another one of housing programs in terms of, because we have different pots. If someone all they need is just the security deposit funds rent and they can sustain on their own, we'll help them with one pot, or if individual needs subsequent rental payments, we'll refer them to another program. Because they may not be able to sustain after we've paid the initial cost to get them into the home.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'll turn it
Thank
over
you.
to Melanie Kagan with CFR, or is it Lee?
Good afternoon,
Hey.
Chairwoman.
Good
Cupid,
afternoon.
how are you? It's good
Wonderful.
to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm not Melanie Kagan. I'm Lee Smith with the Center for Family Resources, VP of Operations, and I'm heavily involved with our ERA program, so I'm here to talk about our numbers as well. We're very similar to MUS, so you're going to hear some similarities. Felicia, nice presentation. I have one slide for you today. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. We are very similar in that we have a call center model so that families will call our organization and they are routed to 2 resource coordinators. And we also do a pre-screen, so we fill out what's called an intake call form so that we can identify up front if someone is a good candidate for ERA. To Chairwoman Cupid's point, you don't want to send someone down the path if they're just going to be denied at the end, because everybody's frustrated in that process. So we just do some initial preliminary questions up front to find out if they would be a good candidate for the program, and then they're given an appointment if they are. And then the resource coordinator presents them with the packet of information they need to collect and start working on before their appointment so that we can expedite as quickly as possible, so that they're working on filling out the application, they're collecting their income, they're gathering their COVID hardship, and then they're meeting with the caseworker. We're doing a lot of our appointments by phone. Families can come in, they can email us, they can fax us, they can snail mail. We open up every door for them to be able to reach us. So we've done 235 appointments. We have on the docket right now potential 446 more to serve. We've completed 157. So that means all of the documentation made it to a case file and payment has gone out on 157 households. We had 44 incomplete, meaning the client did not continue with us. They didn't follow back up with us. We, like MUS and the other providers, are giving a 15-day window or so. The application says we'll give you a 7-day window. We've all stretched that as much as we can to help people as much as possible. We had 11 denials. So I've broken down those 11 for you. 7 have not been impacted by COVID. They just couldn't show us And there's like a list of 13 to 15 things that someone could come to the table with, and we try to be as broad as possible with keeping the integrity of the program. But 7 just could not show a COVID impact. 2 didn't have any arrears owed. 1 was over income, and 1 had a direct relationship with the tenant, which the federal government will not let us expend those funds for. We have 23 that we touched that were also being served by another provider. So we're using a system called Client Track so that we can work together with all the providers so that we don't duplicate and serve the same family. So 23 of those that we were touching are being touched by another provider, so they were being served. As of last Friday, so we started in April, as Deborah said, through last Friday, we send checks out every week. We've expended $1.1 million. And our average award is $7,060.
Wow. Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that. Does anyone have any questions?
I think Melly's going to add a couple of comments, and then I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very
Thank
good.
you, guys. Thank you, everybody, for having us today. I just want to say that this process has been a giant endeavor for all of us. So just to put it in perspective, we were just running numbers from last year. We started receiving funds to do COVID hardship or, assistance, financial assistance as early as April of last year. And we expended just under $500,000 from April to December of last year. So for us to have $1 million out the door or over $1 million out the door in just 3 months is a pretty large, significant amount. And so for the questions, especially that Commissioner Sheffield asked about prevention for homeless families so that they don't fall into homelessness, that's usually the smallest amount of funding we get. Out of all the programs, I know, I see your face. Out of all the programs we run, we get a very significant allotment of money from the federal government for homeless families, those that are already experiencing homeless, and a significantly smaller portion to do prevention. And it's usually only that 1 or 2 months that Felicia has referred to, unless we have private funding that can come in and supplement that. But it's much smaller than our homeless programs. So this is the largest amount of prevention money that any of us have probably had in several years. And so we're doing our best to get it out the door, and we appreciate the support of the commissioners and the county.
Thank you, and I appreciate you putting that in perspective for us. Our communications director sent us this article that was talking about how a number of states were struggling to disperse the funds, and a lot of them have only dispersed 5% of the funds that they've received. If you look at what Cobb County has received, we've dispersed about 25% or more when I add the numbers from this presentation. So we are hauling compared to not only what other states are doing at this time, but based off of what you were able to do last year and what you typically disperse. So again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I want to make sure I say it, if I have to say it 5, 10 times, that I am grateful for you and your organization. Thank you for going above and beyond for us at this time. This is a challenging time for so many people, and you deal with people who are literally at their worst time. And you've been able to help a lot of people that you would have helped anyway because you were called to this work prior to the pandemic. And I know that there are some limitations that are on you that really you could have walked away and not been a part of this program. And I didn't share this with Musk, but I want to share this with you, that I am grateful that we do have local providers here that are helping us, because you've been here prior to the pandemic and many people just know CFR. And so I appreciate you being willing to step up, even though we've been limited in our ability to help you help others. If there's anything that we can do, again, we asked this of Ms. Stewart, but I'll ask you, is there something else that we could be doing to help you in this process?
At this point, I don't think so. I mean, we're all working to the best of our ability. We have regular conversations with Debbie, and the partnership with Magistrate has been phenomenal. That is one thing I would like to highlight again. We have one dedicated person who is our person who goes to court, and she's also pulling eviction cases out of our call center. So when somebody calls with an active eviction, we're actually pulling them immediately. She works with Sarah immediately to make sure that those people are on the list, and Sarah knows that they're coming. And we're trying to schedule them times where we can actually be there on the dates that they're scheduled to come in, so that we can really take care of those as fast as possible. So I think we're doing what we can given the parameters that the federal government has lined up in that in the ERA program right now.
Well, thank you again so much, and just thank you for your personal responsiveness to me when I've sent individuals your way. Do any commissioners have any questions? There is a question that I did have regarding the presentation. Did I hear there's a 7-day application period for people to get all of their forms in?
The application itself has the standard application that we all use, has that language in it that says that we need to collect documentation information within 7 days of them submitting their application. That's just to try to keep everybody on track. We work with them the best we can. A lot of times we get most of it in that 7 days, and then there's one piece that we have to kind of track down or chase after. So we're giving people about 3 weeks at this point, maximum. We had a few that languished too long, and so if we can't get things within about 21 days, like 15 working days, 3 regular weeks, we usually will cut them loose at that point because they're starting to not be responsive, or it most likely means that they either found assistance somewhere else, or they've already been through the eviction process, which at that point we can't do much anyway. So.
Very good.
And it causes a backlog, and so we cut
we have
off
to let
at
them
one point because we're taking on new cases every day, and if you still have the backlog, you'll never get to, the new people won't get seen, and so that's why we kind of have that cut off.
Have that window. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Not sure if this is too specific of a question, but regarding the documentation that's collected, do we have is there any kind of trend emerging about what type of documentation is the hardest to provide, or is it just all over the board?
I think it's kind of all over the board.
All over the board, I would say COVID, because really anything else on the list they have. They have their income, they have their ID, where we work with the landlord on the other documentation, so it really would say the COVID hardship, if they just didn't have one, they can't come up with it. But outside of that, everything else is really standard. It's a lease that they already have from their landlord. They fill out a COVID hardship that they sign on their own. The application we provide them, so I would say the COVID piece.
Sometimes we have difficulty navigating the unemployment system because people get locked out and they don't know how to reset, and you can't get through on the phone to anyone in that department ever. So we actually, thanks to Commissioner Sheffield's office, we had to work with somebody who, she was able to put us in contact with someone at DOL to be able to get that settled. But that tends to be an issue if they're on unemployment or have received unemployment, just getting access to their portal because sometimes they don't regularly use it. So.
Understood.
And I would say, Commissioner Richardson, the biggest piece is really just talking to the client, explaining to them what we need. Oftentimes, if we can just verbally talk to them, which is why we do a call center, they understand, and then they can provide it a little bit better. They're like, I was like, do you have this instead of this? And sometimes it's just us navigating the system with them makes it a little bit better.
Okay, about how long when someone does apply, thank you for that information too, I'm grateful. When someone does apply versus that talking conversation, that appointment in a sense, is there a 2-day span, or is it something that happens in conjunction with the application being received? Is there a general timeline there?
They have 2 touch points. So our resource coordinators that take the calls and then also get to them when they're going to be scheduled for an appointment, they give them the documentation list and the application packet. So they're explaining a lot of that to them then. And then when they speak to their case manager during their appointment, if they haven't received all the documentation, that conversation is part of that appointment as well. So they get it in 2 different places.
Okay. But what's the delay on that? Just curious.
It's several weeks at this point. Okay. And we've got 446 calls just for rent and utility assistance, and this is only one program out of probably 9 others that we manage all year long, and so we have to bucket everybody. So we have several weeks in delay right now because we're limited in just people.
So that, I was going to say, so there's a capacity constraint.
Yeah, and it's I would love to say that you could hand me a bucket of money and I could go out and do it all. But from a business standpoint, for business decisions on my end, it's not that simple. We're about maxed out just in terms of space constraint and what I have available from resources like computers and things of that nature. We grew pretty quickly to staff up for this program, but we're still managing every single other program that we have. So it's not as simple as pulling people off. We have federal money that has to be spent down, and we have to be really diligent about that. So I can't, and case managers are paid by certain grants, and so it's not a simple shift people around or just hire a bunch of people. It's really challenging for organizations, you all would know, to go, from this to this and then back to this, because this is not permanent.
Yeah.
So it's, we're doing what we can. We've added admin support. We've added a lot of other things, but from a capacity standpoint, we're probably 3.5 people full-time on this is about where we are. So,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Some addition, yes, sorry, we still have.
No, that's okay. Do you have a list of the documents on your website for the applicants to review to kind of reduce that turnaround time?
Yeah, it's on, there's a list on the Cobb County site, and it's on the first 2 pages of the application. They can access it pretty much on anybody's site to see what that list is. So yes, they see it. We try to get that information out as quickly as possible. Like I said, our intake folks will tell them immediately kind of what that list is and try to get it to them early. CobbCounty.org/ERA.
Very good.
Has all of them listed. Ross and I have gone back and forth on that flyer about 10 times.
So in addition to that, is the 13 to 15 COVID-related impact criteria also on that website?
It is.
Okay.
It's on the application
It's on the
as well.
application as well.
On the application, okay.
Yeah.
Very
It's
good.
a
And
pretty
then can you,
extensive list.
go ahead.
I said it is an extensive list to really give them an idea of what they can present.
Very good. And then also for these numbers here, I'm trying to understand if all of these numbers are a subset of this 446, which is the total number, or are these in addition to, if you can
The
help me?
157, 44, 11, and 23 is the 235.
It's part of the 235.
Right,
Oh,
yeah.
that's the 235. And the,
And then the 446 is just, that's what's waiting.
That's pending.
that's what's waiting.
Waiting. That's in the pipeline.
That's in addition to the 235.
Wow.
So we
Yeah, we take-
serve 235 households, but we constantly have people in the queue because the calls are coming in daily.
And then the court. So like, it was our day in court Friday, and it was the busiest day I think they'd had in a while, so she probably pulled another, I don't know if Sarah's still here, but it was probably 20 to 30 came off of that.
I would presume that those are going to be expedited since they're in court.
Yes and no. We're working the best we can to do that process, but again, there's only so many people and so many hours, so we're working within their parameters and
Okay.
really moving those along. But yes, the idea is that once they get pulled off of the eviction docket, there's a window of time, and then their case is rescheduled. So there's a continuance, and they're rescheduled to come back at a certain point, at which point we should be done with that application.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
All right, I presume we'll have another provider come on up. I don't know. I can barely see them. I hope so.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Commissioners, thank you so much for this opportunity to present and most importantly, this opportunity to serve Cobb County. Much of what you will hear today will be a lot of what you've already heard, so I'll be more than happy to address any particular questions that you might have. Thank you, and once again, good afternoon from Home Free, and this is our status report up through June 30th. Most commonly known in Cobb County as Cobb Home Saver, so that's cobbshomesaver.org is the website that people can go to in terms of to fill out the online portal application. And our next slide will basically take you through where we are as of June 30th. As it stands right now, we've received 1,509 applications, and of those 1,509, 121 have been denied, 512 are incomplete, in other words, started or not finished. There's information that they have, documentation they have not provided to us, a combination of just being unresponsive, because it's really easy to click. Our intake process does try to filter as best as possible in terms of those critical questions like, are you a resident of Cobb County? Do you have a valid COVID hardship? So that we can at least streamline And what the system does is that it preempts them and doesn't allow them to go any further if they don't answer yes to the proper questions. But people oftentimes just will click yes just so they can get through to the next phase, obviously. And then when it's time to actually produce that documentation, they realize, okay, it's not just saying yes, I really have to show and demonstrate a valid COVID hardship. I have to show a loss in income. A lot of people just become unresponsive at that time. And then the number of applications pending that are awaiting documentations, the 356 are those who answered accordingly to the intake. Where we see from the initial counselor and coordinator looking at their file that they do qualify. So that 356, we're just waiting the remainder of the documentation in terms of to move forward with that file. In terms of the status of those eligible applications that have passed and made it through that point, total number approved and funded as of June 30th is 254. Approved and in the process of being funded is 47. And the number of completed in the pipeline that's waiting final approval and review is 219. Now, what that number is that we have to make sure that we safeguard the system and make sure that there's a fiduciary responsibility on our behalf to make sure that the documentation that was provided was valid. So we added another person in between the period from when the counselor gets all the documentation and approves them to actually review the file before we actually send it on to accounting to actually be funded, because Debbie and the county has obviously warned us that we have to make sure we're safeguarding the government's money and to make sure there's no duplication. And we've had a few that have slipped through the cracks only because we started the client tracking system at the beginning of this year. And as you know, the Cobb Home Saver program actually began last year, which is the reason why we have so many people in our queue as well, too, because we had some people who qualified for the previous program who actually came back to this program and that was actually waiting for this program to begin. So that's why our average grant award is a little higher, because we've had people who've been waiting in queue, and as soon as the program was green lighted, we were able to put those applicants through. Okay. So funding awarded in April was $139,451.40. Awarded in May was $902,399.88. Awarded in June was $1.3 million, $307.81 for a total of $2.347,159.09. And again, that average grant award is $9,240.78. Key observations. Next slide, please. Much of what you've already heard is that oftentimes applicants don't fully understand that an application approval requires 100% of the documentation. So a common complaint that we'll get is, hey, I haven't heard anything back. And we're actually waiting on them to give us one more piece of documentation, because it's not a program where if you're 99%, then you can go ahead and get approved and get the funds. If we're waiting for one piece of documentation, then even if you started your application 3.5 weeks ago, we just cannot move forward until we receive that documentation. Applicants not wanting or unable to provide the documentation to provide a valid COVID-19 hardship. A lot of people are assuming that because COVID was a pandemic, and if I'm having some difficulties financially, then I qualify. That is a COVID hardship because we're in a pandemic and I'm struggling. So it's a COVID hardship. And actually not, as you've heard earlier and as outlined in the program, is that you have to have suffered a financial loss impacted by COVID-19 for you or someone within your household. So this is the biggest piece that, and it's represented on the application on everyone, all the service provider sites, but it's just often overlooked. And most people, when and I get it, when most people are challenged and you're faced with an eviction, you're going to tap every possible resource that is available to you, just in case someone says yes. So we get it, we understand, but we still have that responsibility to safeguard the program. And then, as you've heard earlier, I don't want to sound like a broken record, just the staffing of internal resources are limited based on capacity constraints. Unlike other programs, once you fund an applicant, you're done with that applicant. This program, the applicant actually can come back. And the way the program is written, so what that means is that once we work that file and we provide them, say, with 3 months of rental assistance, if they're still within this time frame, because they have through the end of the year, if they still have not found gainful employment because of that COVID impact, they come back again. So we have these pool of new files that are coming in, and then you have this pool of active files that are continuing to come back. And the program doesn't allow us to just anticipate how long they're going to necessarily need the funding. We can only really fund them at 30 days at a time. Now, there are some exceptions where we can see, obviously, if they're impacted and on a case-by-case basis where we can go as much as 90 days, but that's not an automatic. So in other words, the person technically would have to come back, and when they come back, we have to re-verify documentation, make sure that income is still where it is, and so there is a still soft approval process that they still have to go through, because it's just not automatic that they come back each month and just ask for additional funds. So there is a capacity constraint as it relates to that. And when we're doing this as an online portal, the good part is that it does give people easy access. The challenging part about it is that it's really easy to apply. So when you do an online application, for us, that becomes an active file, because we don't know if that person is just testing the waters, if they're really someone who's genuinely in need. So we try to work everyone the same.
Very good.
Questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions? I do have a question. If you can help clarify some of this data for me again.
Sure.
Differentiating the number of applications incomplete versus the number of applications pending awaiting documentation.
Sure, going back to that slide?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Which number?
It's the 512 and 356 on the first.
The 512 versus the 356? So the 512 are the number of applications where people have just started and just not finished. They're just unresponsive. But we're assuming that there is a need there, and the reason why they may be unresponsive is that they're taking the time to go and get their documentation. So that's just those who are just unresponsive. The 356 are those who are responsive, that are saying, hey, I understand I still owe you 2 more pieces of documentation. Okay. Then those are the folks that we're actually in contact with. They're responding to us, and we're waiting for the remainder of their documentation.
Very good. And also help me understand that if somebody does want to come back and get additional funding through the ERA program, do they have to go back to the same nonprofit organization that they started with?
So that's really an interesting question. Initially, that's what we thought is going to be the best way, and that's what we try to do, because we want to eliminate the chance and the risk of duplicative services where someone goes to one agency and then goes back to another agency and apply for the same period, so that we can eliminate overlapping. So we try to use the client track program and that system, so that if we see that you began with Star C or a different organization, we try to send you back to that organization, because one, it's going to be easier for you, because if you have to start a whole new application process, you start from zero. If you go back to that organization you began with, they already have a lot of your documentation, they have your COVID hardship on file, so you're 90% there. So it's going to be easier for you to go back to the organization that you began to gain assistance with.
Very good. Well, as I share with others, I also want to share with you just a big thank you for all the work that you've done, not only through ERA, but through the CARES funding, as you've been working with our families, not only who are renting, but also some of our homeowners. We could not have been able to stabilize as many households as we have without your help and participation. And we know that it has not been under the easiest constraints. So I personally want to say thank you, and encourage you that you are helping real people, and you already know this because this is the work that you've chosen even prior to the pandemic, and we're just grateful to have your partnership and being able to help as many families as possible.
Well, thank you, and I would like to say for the record that Cobb County has just been phenomenal in terms of the support that all the agencies get. Everyone seems to be so accessible. Your constituents, they contact you, you contact us. There's never a time that it takes a length of time to get a call back from Dr. Morris or Debbie or anyone else, a judge from the magistrate's office. I mean, you're working hard to make the process as easy as it possibly can be. So we thank you for that, for just being accessible, for being open. You're open to listening. The staff is open to listening, and wherever you can try to provide support and assistance, you've been doing that. So thank you so much for making this process as easy as it currently is.
Thank you, and thank you for being personally responsive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. With that, I believe we have Star C that's here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Audria Reese. I'm the Executive Director for Star C, and I'm glad to be here with you today to give you an update on our emergency rental assistance program and really kind of a bit about our overall relationship with Cobb. I'll start by providing a little bit of context about where we've been with Cobb and where we are today. You can go to the first slide. So this slide just shows a bit about our overall rental assistance relationship with Cobb. We've been operating with you all for the past year, so since May of 2020 up until now, under the CARES Act, which was very popular and successful here in Cobb. We paid out $3.4 million, and since we've launched the ERA1 program, we've paid out $1.2 million, which I'll go into more detail with that. But so far in our relationship with Cobb County, we've paid out just under $4.7 million. You all have been our largest municipality that we've worked with. We've also worked with DeKalb, Fulton, and then in our general funding, we had covered a 14-county area, but really had our strongest partnership here in Cobb and really established some things that have been a model for other municipalities in other parts of the state. So we really do appreciate your partnership.
Very
You
good.
can go to the next slide. So this slide, I just want to put this up just to let you all know what the resources that have been dedicated to this particular program. As you know, with the CARES Act, when that got started, everyone across the country just took an all-hands-on-deck approach to providing as much resources as quickly as possible. As we went into this program, we wanted to bring additional resources to bear, so we invested in the Neighborly online application portal. Neighborly is an online portal that was created specifically for the federal funding of emergency rental assistance. It's used by major municipalities across the country and other municipalities here in the state of Georgia. We've used them for the processing of the ERA1 program. We've also had landlord training programs for those landlords who have partnered with us previously to let them know what this new program entailed so that they could get in place and do their part to get their tenants funded. Also, we've held tenant training sessions, and I just bring that up because if you work under the CARES Act program to this program, it's dramatically different. And that's why it's been so challenging for tenants to get the resources and the assistance that they need. Clearly, it was just much easier to get funding under the CARES Act program. The requirements were more tenant-friendly versus the stringent requirements that we're under now. But we're very dedicated to executing this program with compliance. So we've had some tenant training programs as well. We have this magistrate court partnership that we've had since last summer with Judge Murphy and the Magistrate Court of Cobb. We've used this as a model. And other municipalities around the state have picked it up as well to keep people from ultimately being evicted and to stay in their homes even at that point. Other resources coming on July 31st, we will be at the District 4 Career Fair Outreach, so we really appreciate that opportunity to speak directly with tenants. A little bit concerned that we might be on the hot seat there, but we'll be ready to answer any questions that come our way because our heart is to help people and to do as much as we can. And then just the resource that we have of our dedicated team. This is a high-touch program. It requires a lot of follow-up, a lot of case management. But we have a team that's dedicated because we know that we want to do our part to execute this MOU that we have with you, and that ultimately there are families behind all these applications, and we're trying to do that. So you can go to the next slide. So this shows some statistics of where we are as of the end of June. As others stated, and as you all know, we started taking applications at the beginning of April, and since that time, we have taken just under 1,800 applications. For the number of applications that are in queue that are complete, there are 414, and they are awaiting review. And the way our online portal works is you can start an application, but if you don't complete it, no one's going to look at it. So it can sit out there and languish, but it's really on the tenant to make sure that they get their documentation in. Now, of course, they could upload anything, but they have to upload something to get to a status of being complete, and then it will be looked at. As far as applications that have been started but are not complete, we have 782. The number of applications that are currently under active case management right now are 153. The number of applications that have been rejected or closed is 179, and the reasons for those are just half of them, 57%, so that's almost 60% have been incomplete. And that's where we do have to close them out of our system. We give them about 2 or 3 weeks to get through that, and if they cannot move forward in the process, then they're closed, but that's after multiple opportunities of follow-up. And then just once the applications have gone through review, 18% did not live in Cobb, 13% has started with another provider. Some were over the AMI limitation, which of course is another distinction between this program and the CARES Act program. And then about 7% had either moved away from the property or their application was withdrawn after at the request of the tenant. Our total expenditures at this point is $1.232 million. That represents 248 payments, and we have helped 503 people as far as the total numbers in the household. Our average award has been just at $5,000, and we expect for that number to go up because initially we were primarily focused on rental arrears, but this program allows for the payment of 3 months rent in advance. So we have started doing that in the month of June, and so we expect for our average payout to increase. Our remaining ERA grant that we have to pay out is right at $2.9 million, and we are confident that we will get that paid out over the course of this year within the time frame that is allotted for this program. So in terms of the challenges that we're seeing, it's the same thing that everyone else has said that spoke before me. The constraints of, from an internal perspective, the constraints of capacity versus the queue versus the amount of people who need help. It is ongoing. A lot of times when you hear on the news the amount of money that has been put towards rental assistance, it's eye-popping, but then everywhere has such a small dollar amount of payout. We have a monthly breakfast with Star C, of course, on Zoom, and we had someone from DCA on there in June. At that point, they had received $705 million and they had paid out 8.5. So that just lets you know what the challenges are with this program. We are seeking to do our best. From a tenant perspective, it's just really understanding what the requirements of this program are, getting those requirements in there. And then I think particularly, as Ernest said, just because you're having a hardship during the time of COVID does not mean you're having a COVID hardship. So that's what we're running into. But we really appreciate this partnership with Cobb, and we look forward to continuing to work together. So,
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? I personally want to thank you for your continuing partnership with Cobb to help families gain housing. You've been with us prior to the ERA funds through the CARES program and have just continued on and have even dealt with the difficulty of transitioning from CARES to ERA. And I talked to Ernest about that, but we know that put a strain on everyone because, again, we wanted to help, but as you shared, the requirements were just much more stringent than the other program, which has been a challenge to our residents, and they've communicated that, but still you've continued to help us. I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
I know you've been committed to this work prior to the pandemic, and just thank you for continuing to be committed, even though we've been limited in how we've been able to help you help others. Yeah. You were very helpful in explaining a lot of the data, and others have helped to clarify some questions. I appreciate the forward look, the 3-month forward look to pay, so you're not dealing with people who are having to come right back to the program, and that's something I'd like to see if other organizations are doing.
They are doing that.
They are all doing
they
that?
are.
Okay, very good. And just appreciate your emphasis that this is a high-touch program, that you're dealing with people who, again, are at a tough point and probably need help to get everything in order to be able to participate in the program. So with that, are there any additional questions from commissioners? Thank you so much for your time being here today and just for your time in supporting this program.
Yes, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone from Sweetwater here that I don't see? I apologize, but our representative from Sweetwater, I think, is on her way, but she's not here yet, so I will get her numbers to you all with any updates from her whenever I hear back from her.
That would be helpful.
So if there's not any other questions, we're complete.
Do you have any observations, anything you think this board should know as you've been ushering in this process between both with both programs, between both programs, and working with the service providers?
Not any additional observations, I mean, other than just confirming the fact that there's a lot of pieces to this, and it does take somebody working, all the way through the process. And as Ernest stated,
it's not a one-time thing. It's not a one-time payout because you can get up to 12 months assistance through this program, provided you have the hardship. But it might be that you have 6 months in arrears, you think everything's going okay, and then you need to come back. The assistance is there, and of course we want the people to come back if there is a need, but it does take manpower to work through those applications.
Well, thank you for your female power and in working with all the service providers and with us as we've not only been reaching out to our service providers, but also to you.
Not a
when there have been
problem. Thank
legal
you.
questions about how funds have been dispersed. Just thank you for everyone. Thank you, Dr. McMorris, who's also been helping to partner with you, your office, the service providers, and us and constituents to answer questions and to try to get people funding so they could keep a roof over their head.
Absolutely.
All of you have been going above and beyond.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any additional questions? Well, with that, we have about 17 minutes for lunch prior to any 1 o'clock meetings, but thank you all for your time today. It was truly helpful. Thank you, Chief Magistrate Murphy and your team for all that you guys have been doing in the courtroom as well.